Chapter 51. He hadn't noticed the changes before, but after Tianming's reminder, Gon immediately realized the effect of the new bandages. He twisted his body slightly, moved his neck, and was surprised to find how relaxed his body felt. There was none of the sluggishness or pain that had plagued him from his earlier injuries. Then, impulsively, he tried to pull his right hand out of the sling, but Killua promptly smacked him on the top of the head, leaving a big bump. Gon rubbed the bump with his left hand, grinning. "Killua, what was that for? I should be asking you what you're doing. The doctor told you not to move around, especially not your right arm. It was shattered, remember? You want to make it completely useless or what?" Gon laughed sheepishly, then tried to explain. "I don't know, after Tianming changed the bandages, my body just feels like it did before the injury. I wanted to test it out. Don't worry, I'll be careful." In the end, Killua could only sigh and let Gon try. Gon slowly pulled his arm out and carefully rotated his right forearm. Just earlier, even the slightest movement had caused stabbing pain. Now, there was none. He threw back the blanket and jumped to the floor, no trace of the deep, piercing pain he'd felt before. It was like he'd never been injured at all. "Killua, did you see that? I'm totally healed." Gon cheered as he bounced up and down. Killua's eyes widened, then quickly shifted to Tianming, clearly waiting for an explanation. Tianming stopped Gon from hopping around, then calmly said, "You can move around now, but that doesn't mean your injuries are fully healed. If you overdo it, you could make things worse, so no training or reckless activity." Gon pouted a bit, but he could still walk and move freely, which was more than enough for someone with his energetic personality. He looked at Tianming with gratitude. "Thank you, Tianming. If it weren't for your help, I'd probably have to stay in bed for months. How did you do it? Is it your Nen ability?" Tianming nodded, confirming Gon's guess, then offered a brief explanation of his ability. The Supreme Bandage was just one derivative of his true Nen ability, just like how rock, paper, scissors was made up of 3 forms, each being part of a greater whole. Still, he didn't reveal everything. After all, he couldn't exactly tell them he created his Nen ability based on the memories of a time traveler. Gon's eyes sparkled after hearing about the ability. With something like that, you could heal from almost anything. If only he had that ability, he'd never have to worry about injuries in battle again. After giving Gon a few warnings, Tianming shifted the conversation and asked about what had happened while he was away. Gon wasn't much help. He hadn't left the ward since being injured, so he didn't know anything about what had happened outside. Killua, on the other hand, had grown up in an assassin family and was naturally more attuned to gathering information. He filled them both in. The incident from more than a week ago had caused a huge uproar. The captain and a core member of the search team had been killed in the underground garage, while the other 3 members were seriously injured and still hospitalized. The entire Sky Arena was shaken. The management had ordered a massive city-wide search. But even after combing through Balo from top to bottom, they couldn't find the man known as Green. They even checked every fighter above the 200th floor, but found no one matching the name or description. In the end, they had no choice but to issue a wanted notice through the Hunter Association's website, officially listing Green as a C-level wanted criminal. And with that, the case was shelved. Killua crossed his arms and flopped onto the sofa, placing his short legs on the coffee table. Smirking, he said, "So now you're a wanted man. But only C-level? That's kinda lame. Some of the servants in my house are B-level." Tianming curled his lip and knocked Killua's legs off the table. Killua stumbled and nearly fell off the couch. Once he recovered, he shot Tianming a look full of resentment. Tianming noted that Killua had gotten way too comfortable with him. He used to be polite, now he was throwing around jokes about his bounty. Of course, the wanted levels in the hunter world weren't based purely on strength. They were more about the level of social harm a person had caused. Strength was secondary. For instance, many of the criminals locked up in Trick Tower during the hunter exam were C-levels. That didn't mean they were strong, it meant they had done a lot of bad things. Although Tianming had killed 2 Nen users, With Dean's death also being pinned on him, he hadn't harmed any civilians, so his crimes were deemed C-level. He wasn't surprised that Killua had figured out his identity. Tianming had vanished from the arena right after a huge incident. If Killua hadn't put 2 and 2 together, then his brain might as well be sold at the market for 10 jenny a pound. Right then, Gon suddenly cried out, "Ah! Wait! Don't tell me the wanted criminal Green is actually Tianming? Is that true? I never would have guessed." Tianming and Killua both froze, expressions blank. Calling Gon's brain worth 10 jenny was probably overestimating it. Killua turned to Tianming with a half-smirk. "Still, that was seriously impressive. I heard all 5 search team members were Nen users. You killed 2, injured 3, and walked away without a scratch. You're almost catching up to my dad." Tianming rolled his eyes. This guy only ever talks about his dad, Silva, right? Honestly, Tianming didn't mean to brag, but at this point, he was pretty sure he could beat Silva in a one-on-one fight, as long as there was no outside help, no preset traps, no dirty tricks, no sneak attacks, no. Okay, maybe he still needed a bit more work. He wasn't afraid of Silva in a straight fight, but in the Hunter x Hunter world, clean one-on-one duels were rare. If Silva teamed up with Zeno, that righteous 2v1 combo would probably overwhelm him. After chatting a bit more with the 2 kids, Tianming opened the ward door, ready to head back to his own room. But the moment he stepped into the hallway, he froze. Standing there was Wing, expression grim, arms folded. He wore a slightly wrinkled white dress shirt tucked into his pants, giving him a lazy appearance at first glance, but the serious look behind his glasses and the cold tone in his voice left no doubt. "Tianming, what exactly happened that day?" Wing said, voice sharp. "Shouldn't you explain it to the Hunter Association as well?" Chapter 52. Seeing Tianming still pretending to be confused, Wing frowned and asked, "You killed those 2 search team members, didn't you? Why? You could have just cooperated with the investigation. There was no need to." "Shut the hell up." Tianming cut him off with a sharp shout, stopping him mid-sentence. He had deliberately spared Simon at first. The only reason he ended up killing him was because Simon had tried to kill him first. As for Dean, Tianming hadn't even been the one to kill him. Yet all the blame had been dumped on his shoulders, and that infuriated him. But what made him truly furious was something else. He pointed directly at Wing and yelled, "Who told you to come question me? Say it. Right now." Wing stared at him for a moment, then pulled a phone from his pocket. The call was still active. Tianming snatched it from his hand and immediately shouted into the receiver, "Damn it, Netero. Did you send him to interrogate me?" There was a short silence on the other end. Then came Netero's voice, calm but firm. "Tianming, calm down first. Things aren't as serious as you think." "Calm down? Let me ask you, was it you who gave Hisoka his hunter license?" Netero sighed. "Yes. I sent it. And what about Illumi?" "That was me too." Tianming exploded. Hisoka literally said during the exam that he became a hunter just so he could legally kill people. Illumi didn't even pretend, he admitted he's a killer who's taken countless lives. They murder people with their real faces showing, and nobody says a damn thing. But when I change my face and take down a couple of scumbags, suddenly it's a problem. You know what? Fine. I did it. I killed that guy. The name and photo on the wanted poster are wrong. My name is Zhao Tianming. You've had my picture since I applied for the hunter exam. Update the damn poster, or I'll sue you for slander. Better yet, just blow me up with a damn nuke if you dare." Netero was momentarily stunned. He hadn't expected Tianming to react with such aggression. He'd always seemed like a calm, reasonable guy. Apparently, that impression had been dead wrong. Even Wing was shaken by Tianming's sudden intensity. Was this really the same guy who usually spoke so gently and cracked jokes? But Tianming's rage came from something deeper. It wasn't just about being blamed, it was about hypocrisy. Guys like Hisoka and Illumi had killed so many people they'd probably lost count. Members of the Phantom Troop, literally level wanted criminals, had taken the hunter exam under fake identities, and the association still gave them licenses like nothing happened. No one batted an eye. But when it came to him, he was treated like a criminal. Why? Because he had been too polite before. Too easygoing. And now, people like Netero thought they could treat him however they pleased. Zhao Tianming didn't enjoy killing, but he wasn't someone you could walk all over. In his previous life, he hadn't joined the Navy for some noble sense of justice. It was because the benefits were good and it let him roam the seas freely. If scumbags like Sengoku or Kainu had tried to mess with him, he would have raised a pirate flag and rebelled on the spot. Now that Netero was staying quiet, Tianming pressed on. I really appreciate that you helped me open my mind back then. But let's not forget, you only did it because you lost a bet. Don't act like some wise old master trying to lecture me. He raised his voice even more. I'm gonna join the Phantom Troop now, kill that bastard Krillo, take his place, unite Meteor City, become Emperor of the Underworld, then conquer the entire Hunter world, and… Stop, stop, stop. Netero cut in. You're getting carried away. Tianming fell silent. Netero sighed again. Since you clearly don't want to be lectured by an old man like me, I'll drop it. I've already cancelled your wanted notice. Now, just tell me what happened that day. I need a full report. Tianming took a deep breath, finally starting to calm down. Then he began recounting everything that had happened. Netero listened in silence the entire time, not interrupting once. Wing, standing nearby, watched Tianming's expression carefully and eventually concluded that he was telling the truth. After a while, Tianming finished his account. Netero let out another long sigh. That's fine then. Now I have something to tell my superiors. This incident had brought Netero a lot of trouble. Even though Tianming constantly denied being his student, the rumors had already spread like wildfire within the Hunter Association. Netero had taken on a new disciple. And rumors like that were hard to quash. Pariston, the vice-chairman, had used this opportunity to file a formal complaint, accusing Netero of shielding a student involved in a murder investigation. It had taken a huge amount of political maneuvering for Netero to smooth things over. He'd only sent Wing to question Tianming out of frustration, trying to blow off steam, but he hadn't expected the blowback to hit him instead. Of course, none of this was shared with Tianming. Even if it had been, Tianming probably would have just shrugged and said, serves you right. After all, Netero himself had promoted Pariston to vice-chairman. If he hadn't, the guy wouldn't be making his life miserable now. He'd taken on the role of chairman voluntarily. No one had forced him. If he was going to suffer under the title, he had no one to blame but himself. At first, Tianming had thought Netero was some mysterious, all-knowing powerhouse. But now? He just looked like an old man constantly getting pushed around. Honestly, what was the point of him still being alive? He should just grab a nuke and die along with the Chimera Ant King. Better to go out with a bang than keep getting humiliated like this. Having gotten everything off his chest, Tianming calmed down and added, next time you feel the need to act all high and mighty, go chase down some A-level criminals and stop glaring at me like a cow about to lay an egg. With that, he crushed the phone in his hand, shattering it completely. Wing slapped his own forehead, nearly fainting. You broke my phone. I know, Tianming replied flatly. Mine's broken too. I'll go buy a new one later. Wing let out a long sigh. That phone had been a limited edition, only 20 of them existed in the entire world. Where was he supposed to get another one? As he wallowed in despair, Tianming suddenly flashed a grin. You came at me pretty aggressively earlier. What, if I hadn't given you a satisfactory answer, were you planning to take me down? Wing was momentarily stunned, then quickly shook his head. You misunderstood. Even if the association had decided to arrest you, it wouldn't be me doing it, it'd be official bounty hunters. I had no intention of using force. The only reason he'd come at Tianming with such a harsh tone was because he had heard that Netero was being blamed for the whole situation. Wing respected the chairman deeply, so when he heard Tianming was involved, he couldn't help but speak harshly. Tianming just waved him off. It doesn't matter. You're a registered fighter here at the Sky Arena too, right? If you ever want to spar, just come find me. But don't come bother me with this kind of crap again." With that, he walked past Wing and headed downstairs to buy a new phone. Wing turned to glance at Tianming's back as he walked away. Behind the glint of his glasses, a thoughtful expression flickered in his eyes, growing deeper and more unreadable by the second. Chapter 53. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. During that time, Tianming remained secluded in his room, focused entirely on training his Nen control. He remembered that Biscuit had a unique method for improving Ori manipulation, concentrating Nen at the fingertips and shaping it into Arabic numerals like 1 and 2. This wasn't part of traditional Shingenryu cultivation, it was a method Biscuit had created herself. So Tianming was feeling things out as he trained in this direction. He managed to mold his Nen into the shape of a 1 on his fingertip, but it took all his concentration, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't transform it into a 2. Tianming refused to accept this. If Gon, Killua, and the others could master this technique so easily, how could he, who was at least 100 times stronger than them, be stuck like this? Time passed slowly as his aura continued to curl and bend. Finally, under his intense focus, the 1 shifted and turned into a 2. Just as he prepared to push forward and change it to 3. Ring. Ring. His newly bought cell phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking his concentration. The number instantly dissolved into nothing. Tianming sighed and reluctantly pulled out the phone. The caller ID displayed a familiar name, Hisoka. It had been half a month since they last crossed paths in the underground garage. What was this guy planning now? Tianming answered with a grumble. "What do you want, old man?" On the other end, Hisoka let out a strange laugh. His tone was playful as always, still as charming as ever. "Didn't you notice the announcement on the tournament screen?" Tianming frowned and looked up. While he had been training, the Sky Arena's match schedule display had quietly changed. Still holding the phone, he walked over to check the screen. When he saw the latest matchup, a wild grin spread across his face. "You actually challenged me? Looks like someone's itching for a fight." "I thought you'd be excited," Hisoka replied smoothly. "See you in the ring, 1 month from now." With that, he hung up. Tianming stood before the screen, his left fist clenching with anticipation. His right hand still held the phone, an old-school button model he'd paid a lot for. Crushing it in excitement would mean having to buy another one. In the following month, Tianming finally completed his digit-focused aura training. Meanwhile, word of his match with Hisoka began spreading through the Sky Arena, and beyond. Hisoka, as the reigning king of the 200th floor, was already a figure of immense attention. His previously scheduled fight with Castro had been mysteriously cancelled, leaving countless fans furious. Many had looked forward to witnessing that match, some even accused Hisoka of dodging the fight. A few underground gamblers were so angry they put out hits on him. But then, out of nowhere, Hisoka challenged a newcomer. This news hit like a shockwave. Hisoka's name, which had briefly cooled down, exploded in popularity again. The move was so calculated, first laying low, then reigniting hype, that it brought his fame to new heights. As the fight was promoted, many fans started digging into Tianming's background. When they discovered that this new fighter who had just arrived at the 200th floor was rumored to be a student of Chairman Netero, the entire Sky Arena went wild. The upcoming match between Netero's student and the 200th floor King Hisoka sparked a frenzy among battle lovers everywhere. Netero's strength was acknowledged as the pinnacle of the hunter world. The idea of watching his student take on Hisoka, one of the arena's most dangerous men, was exhilarating. Tianming, however, was not thrilled about the rumors. Furious, he stormed into the competition management office, grabbed the person in charge by the collar, and demanded that the promotional materials be changed. Reluctantly, the organizers adjusted the posters. But the damage was already done. Once the narrative had been planted, no amount of clarification could undo it. Tianming could only collapse onto his sofa and sulk as the world's misunderstanding of him grew even deeper. April 4, 1999. The long-awaited showdown between Hisoka and Tianming officially began. The Sky Arena's colossal venue, capable of holding 10,000 spectators, was packed to the brim. Even the neighboring arenas were filled with people watching the live broadcast. In the audience sat Wing, Gon, Killua, Zushi, and others, all eager to witness the match. Initially, Wing had objected to Gon attending. His injuries hadn't fully healed, and the risk of relapse was high. But when Gon tore off his bandages, Wing's eyes nearly popped out of his head. The wounds were completely gone. Not only that, Gon looked stronger than before. In the end, Wing agreed to let him come. Gon, trembling with excitement, could hardly sit still. Finally, he exclaimed, "I get to see Tianming fight Hisoka again. I know Tianming can beat him this time." Killua nodded beside him. Unlike Gon's blind faith, Killua's belief came from careful observation. Over the past month, he'd noticed Tianming growing more and more powerful, so much so that his abilities were becoming unreadable. Killua wasn't just hopeful. He was confident. Wing, however, remained calm. "It's not about winning or losing," he said. "Both of them are at a level far beyond yours right now. What matters is that you watch carefully. Study how the strong fight. That's the real purpose of being here." All three nodded seriously, then turned their eyes toward the arena, vowing not to miss a single detail. In the last row of the main venue, a pink-haired girl sat silently, her expression unreadable. She wore a white martial arts gi over black shorts. Her long pink hair was tied in a ponytail, and a white cloth bundle rested near her feet, its contents unknown. Her name was Maki, a founding member of the Phantom Troupe. The troupe, while highly organized, didn't limit its members' freedom. They wandered the world, acting individually unless summoned. Maki hadn't planned to attend this match. She had no interest in flashy arena duels. In her mind, real battles involved blood and death, not lights, crowds, and drama. But then Hisoka had offered her a ridiculously high fee to come patch him up afterward. Her attitude? "If he's dumb enough to pay, I'd be dumb not to take it." As for Tianming, this supposed powerhouse going toe-to-toe with Hisoka? She didn't care. To her, he was just a flower raised in a greenhouse, no match for someone who had tasted real combat. Chapter 54. Thunderous cheers erupted through the stadium. The sound waves echoed and rebounded off the walls, shaking the air with excitement. The roaring crowd pushed the atmosphere to its peak. Amidst the roaring cheers, the two stars of the match leapt onto the stage from the east and west entrances. Surrounded by the deafening excitement, Tianming couldn't help but drift into memories of his past life. This wasn't his first time standing in the spotlight, fighting under the gaze of thousands. Back in his previous life, he'd participated in duels in Dressrosa's Coliseum. But the tournaments in Dressrosa were long and tedious, and the reward hadn't been something tempting like the flame fruit. After a few matches, he lost interest and quit the competition. Now, standing in another high-stakes arena, the memories flooded back. He wondered, had his adjutant and soldiers managed to escape Kaito's grip after his death? Was anyone still feeding his dog, Brat? Just as his mind was wandering, Hisoka's voice snapped him back to the present. "What's wrong? Spacing out? Remembering something?" Tianming shook his head. "Nothing major. Just reminiscing about the past. So you were the one who threw that stone, right? I plan to settle that score with you today." Hisoka raised the king playing card to his lips and chuckled. "Weren't you the one always craving a fight with strong opponents? I merely helped you achieve that goal. If you don't appreciate it, that's fine. But blaming me? That's just rude." "Well said. Since you helped me achieve my goal last time, I'll help you achieve yours today. Didn't you also want to fight a powerful opponent? I'll give you a good time." With the referee's signal, Tianming vanished in an instant. He reappeared right in front of Hisoka, his right hand shooting out to grab his throat. Given Tianming's strength, if he'd made contact, Hisoka wouldn't have been able to escape no matter how hard he struggled. But in the very next moment, Hisoka also disappeared, narrowly dodging the fatal blow. Tianming's eyes widened in disbelief as he turned to his right. There stood Hisoka with his hands on his hips, grinning playfully. "That move of yours is really something. I tried imitating it before, but failed miserably. I even nearly broke my ankle. Just thinking about it gives me chills. I was about to give up, but then I saw you use a slightly different version during that last fight. It looked like it was driven by Nen. So I gave it another try, and guess what? I pulled it off. I owe you a thank you." When he said thank you, Hisoka's tone was deliberately provocative, clearly trying to rile Tianming up. Tianming had already regained his composure. In fact, at this moment, he found himself admiring Hisoka's talent. To have reverse-engineered his shave technique after only seeing it a few times, this guy's martial arts instincts were no joke. The version of the 6 styles Tianming had used in the underground garage was already modified to integrate Nen. Hisoka must have been hiding nearby, watching in silence using Gyo. Honestly, Tianming wasn't that surprised. In his previous life, he'd encountered many geniuses who could mimic techniques just by watching them once. Hisoka was clearly cut from that same cloth. He looked at him with a grin. "So besides shave, what else have you picked up?" Hisoka said nothing. Instead, he leapt high into the air, stepped lightly a few times on air, and suddenly clung to the arena's ceiling. With his feet stuck upside down to the roof, Hisoka looked down at Tianming and smiled. "How's that? Pretty cool, right?" Tianming didn't respond. He simply stood still. But the audience erupted. "Oh my god! Did you see that? Am I hallucinating? Hisoka just stepped on air, and now he's hanging upside down from the ceiling? As expected of the 200th floor champ. He just pulled off something we couldn't even dream of." In the stands, Wing narrowed his eyes and watched carefully. But instead of explaining, he turned to Gon and Killua. "Do you two understand what Hisoka just did?" Killua deactivated his Gyo and frowned and thought. Hisoka probably learned the technique called 6 styles from Tianming. He told us before that it's a pure physical martial art with very strict physical requirements, so he didn't teach it to us at the start. But the version Hisoka just used clearly includes Nen. I don't know if it's his own improvement or if he picked it up from Tianming's modified version. Wing shook his head. "Never trust your opponent's words so easily. Hisoka is a magician. What you see isn't always what's real." Killua fell into deep thought, while Gon kept his eyes locked on the corner of the ring, completely focused. Back in the center of the arena, Tianming stood still, unmoving, despite Hisoka having copied his techniques. Then, without a word, he slowly closed his eyes. A moment later, an invisible pressure pulsed outward from his body. His Nen spread in every direction, extending in a perfect circle 300 meters from his body before stopping. This was the advanced sensory technique known as En. Though both En and observation Haki were used for enemy detection, they had key differences. Haki was more tuned to sensing life forms, but didn't offer much detail about terrain or inanimate objects. En, on the other hand, expanded the user's own aura. Within that field, the user could perceive everything: life forms, walls, weapons, hidden Nen, and even tiny shifts in the atmosphere. For reading other Nen users, En was far more precise than Haki. In a battle between aura users, this gave Tianming a serious edge. The instant Tianming activated En, every Nen user in the arena froze. Even Maki, who had been lounging calmly in the back row, shot to her feet in shock. Her eyes sharpened instantly. Though she composed herself quickly and sat back down, her heart was still pounding. She had spent years around skilled Nen users, but this was the first time she had encountered someone with such overwhelming Nen reserves. Even Yuvogin couldn't compare. This man named Tianming was not simple. For the first time, Maki took the fight seriously. She leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on the arena, not daring to miss a single move. Chapter 55. The roar of the crowd vanished in an instant. A sudden hush fell over the arena as Tianming activated his En, sensing every person and object within the stadium. In the next moment, he opened his eyes, a flash of light passing through them. His figure flickered, vanishing and reappearing in one of the ring's corners. As soon as his foot touched the ground, the floor beneath cracked violently, exploding into rubble. At the same time, the aura that had been hidden in that spot dispersed completely. It was a trap. Hisako had buried playing cards in the floor and cloaked them with a thin illusion using Nen, hoping to catch Tianming off guard. One by one, Tianming moved swiftly across the arena, dismantling 3 or 4 more traps. After the last one was cleared, he looked up at Hisako, still hanging from the ceiling. "Stop with the tricks. Come down here and fight me fair and square." At this point, Tianming was certain Hisako hadn't mastered the Nen-enhanced versions of Shave or Moon Step. His high-speed movement and ability to step on air came entirely from cleverly mimicking his own Nen ability, Bungee Gum. There was a technique in advanced Nen manipulation called in, or concealment. This technique didn't just hide a user's aura, it could also mask already emitted aura from being detected. For example, Kurapika's chains were usually visible, giving the illusion of being a simple conjured weapon. But in truth, the chains were created via materialization Nen and hidden using Nen, allowing for devastating surprise attacks. That's exactly what Hisako had done, using Bungee Gum to simulate high-speed footwork and aerial movement, while concealing the aura trails to trick others into thinking he had mastered Tianming's techniques. The real goal, however, was to disguise the traps hidden across the arena floor. All it would take was a moment of distraction, and he could spring a deadly surprise attack. Realizing this, Tianming felt a little relieved. He had been overthinking things, assuming Hisako had perfectly copied all of his 6 styles. But it turned out Hisako was still relying on deception. Still, Hisako wasn't the only one with absurd talent. As time passed, others might also begin to imitate Tianming's moves, and his 6 styles might one day become mainstream. With his tricks exposed, Hisako gave a shrug and dropped down from the ceiling. Landing lightly, he smiled. "I didn't expect your Ren to cover such a wide range. With that kind of detection, I guess I can't play any games." Then, without warning, Hisako's aura surged. Purple Nen energy exploded outward, crashing toward Tianming like a tidal wave. Tianming's senses went on full alert. This was the first time he had seen Hisako unleash his full power. His aura reserves were massive, almost shockingly so. Hisako's face twisted into a wild grin, his mouth stretching unnaturally wide until he looked like a sinister clown mask. "You wanted a fight with fists, right?" he said, eyes gleaming. "Most of my past fights have been battles of wits. It's been ages since I had a good, old-fashioned brawl." He vanished instantly and reappeared in front of Tianming, slashing a Nen-infused playing card toward his neck. Tianming leaned back just in time to dodge, then redirected all his haki into pure Nen and countered with a sharp Ken-enhanced punch. Hisako dodged again, then stepped down hard on Tianming's foot, binding it in place with aura via Bungee Gum, hoping to restrict his movement. But Hisako was a transmutation-type Nen user, not an emission type. The aura he released outside his body only retained about 60% of its original strength. It wasn't nearly enough to restrain someone like Tianming. With ease, Tianming broke free. And thus, the high-speed, close-quarters battle began. The two clashed in a brutal hand-to-hand duel in the center of the arena. The audience gasped, then erupted into thunderous cheers. This was exactly what they'd come to see. None of that battle of wits nonsense. No complicated traps. Just raw power, fist to fist. This was what they called a real fight. Gon, Killua, and Zushi watched with wide eyes. The strength of both Hisako and Tianming far exceeded what they had imagined. Even Gon and Killua, who had seen the two clash before, hadn't expected the match to be this intense. Tianming had grown immensely since mastering Nen. But what surprised them even more was Hisako's rapid improvement. Killua silently thought to himself that, at this point, even his father Silva or grandfather Zeno might struggle to beat Hisako. Wing watched with a calm smile. He had studied Hisako's previous fights through footage and reports and concluded that Hisako had already reached his peak. He hadn't expected the man to surpass himself again. But what really caught his attention was Tianming. Wing could tell, it was Tianming's overwhelming presence that had forced Hisako to break past his limits. A powerful rival could bring out strength buried deep within a fighter. Still, Wing wasn't worried. Even though Hisoka had grown stronger, Tianming's growth was on a whole different level. He was gradually gaining full control of the battlefield. Just as Wing predicted, the situation was turning in Tianming's favor. While Hisoka was indeed formidable, he was facing a man with decades of real-world combat experience. If it were a trap-based, mind game match, it might have been close. But in a raw, physical brawl? Tianming's combat instincts were second only to perhaps Netero himself. In the world of the Sky Arena, fistfights were rare. But Tianming had spent years in brutal, bloody sea battles where death came daily. His instincts, honed through hardship and slaughter, far surpassed the norm. With a body reinforced by immense nen and near unbreakable will, it was hard for even Hisoka to land a meaningful hit, let alone cause serious damage. Then, boom! Tianming's fist slammed into Hisoka's abdomen. Hisoka couldn't dodge. In desperation, he blocked with his right arm. Crack! A sharp, sickening snap echoed through the arena. Hisoka's right arm twisted grotesquely, broken clean in half, held together only by skin and muscle. It was no longer usable in combat. Tianming didn't hesitate. He pressed the assault. Within moments, a few more blows landed, and Hisoka's left arm was broken as well. Knocked off balance, Hisoka crumpled to the ground. Chapter 56. Hisoka lay buried under a pile of rubble, bricks, and broken stones, completely obscured from view. The audience held their breath, their eyes locked onto the ring, afraid to blink and miss a moment. As seasoned spectators of the Sky Arena, they knew better than to cheer too early. Fighters sometimes use deceptive techniques like playing dead, only to catch their opponents off guard and turn the tables in a dramatic reversal. No one wanted to pop the champagne at halftime. Meanwhile, Tianming exhaled slowly, his breathing returning to normal. With his end still active, he already knew how the fight had ended. The referee cautiously stepped forward, brushing aside the dust and debris. He knelt down and checked on Hisoka. Hisoka's arms were both broken, blood spilled from his mouth, and his eyes were shut. Although his chest still rose and fell faintly, signs of life, he was clearly unconscious and no longer capable of fighting. The referee stood up, took a deep breath, and announced loudly, "I declare the winner of this match, Zhao Tianming." Whoa! The crowd erupted into thunderous cheers. Even veteran fans, who watched fights year-round, rarely saw such an intense, satisfying match. As he stood surrounded by the roaring crowd, Tianming felt a quiet surge of pride. Though he considered himself a loner, he had to admit, it felt good to be cheered on like this. Occasionally stepping into the spotlight wasn't so bad. With all these people shouting his name, he couldn't help but think that joining matches like these now and then might actually be enjoyable. Since awakening his nen ability, his strength had grown at an incredible rate. After every battle in which he suffered serious injury, his physical power jumped another level. At this rate, he half-joked to himself, he might become a Super Saiyan before long. His ability, memories of past lives, allowed his body to strengthen itself after surviving brutal combat. But there were conditions: the damage had to be real and unintentional. Fighting weak opponents or faking injuries wouldn't work. That was the logic of Nen, it followed belief, not loopholes. If your subconscious knew something felt like cheating, the ability wouldn't trigger. Nen couldn't be bugged like a video game. He couldn't, for example, intentionally stab himself and expect a power boost. And certainly no blind person could just say, "I'll trade my eyes for power," unless it was deeply rooted in belief. During his battle with the search team, his near-death injuries had led to massive gains. But in this fight with Hisoka, where he hadn't taken much damage, his physical abilities didn't improve. If he wanted to keep getting stronger, he'd have to keep pushing himself against tougher and tougher enemies. After the match, Wing, Killua, Gon, and Zushi came over to congratulate him. Wing and Killua kept their composure, offering polite nods. Though clearly surprised at Tianming's strength, they didn't show it on their faces. Gon and Zushi, on the other hand, were practically vibrating with excitement. Gon in particular could barely contain himself. He had made a promise to Hisoka, to one day face him in a fair fight. But now, Tianming had defeated Hisoka before he even got the chance. "You're amazing, Tianming," Gon exclaimed. "I didn't expect you to become this strong." Tianming replied humbly, "As long as you keep training hard, you'll catch up. With your talent, it's only a matter of time before you surpass me." Killua suddenly pouted and crossed his arms. "Tianming, you're so unfair. We asked you to teach us that flying trick before, and you refused. But you taught it to Hisoka? That's cold." Gon's eyes lit up, remembering the same thing. They had once begged Tianming to teach them how to walk on air. Back then, he told them they weren't physically ready. But now that they'd been training and had learned Ren, they were more than ready to learn. Tianming blinked. He'd forgotten about that entirely. At the time, his 6 styles technique had been pure physical movement, unsuitable for their bodies. But now that he had modified them with Nen, they could finally learn it. Actually, it wasn't a bad idea. These 2 kids would no doubt be involved in major events in the future. If he ever decided to travel to the Dark Continent, bringing Gon and Killua along as battle companions would be a smart move. He didn't bother explaining that Hisoka had faked his version of the 6 styles. It didn't matter anymore, he had already decided to teach them. "If you want to learn," Tianming said, "I'll teach you. But have you finished learning the basics of Nen?" At that moment, Wing stepped in. "I've already taught them all the foundations. They just need to keep practicing now." "Perfect," Tianming nodded. "Then starting tomorrow morning, I'll teach you the 6 Nen enhanced styles. Come to my room early." "Yay!" Gon and Killua shouted in unison. Tianming raised an eyebrow at Wing. "Why are you teaching them weird names like that?" Zushi, meanwhile, wanted to speak up. He wanted to learn too, but he stayed quiet. He hadn't fully mastered the basics of Nen, and trying to jump ahead would only slow his progress. As the crowd began to disperse, medics carefully transported the unconscious Hisoka to the medical wing. His injuries were devastating, both arms shattered beyond recognition. The doctors examined him for a long time before sighing in frustration. His limbs were so damaged they couldn't be fully repaired. To them, Hisoka was finished. A fighter with 2 useless arms was a fighter no more. Just as they were discussing what to do next, a pink-haired girl quietly entered the room. She raised her hand into a knife shape, and in the blink of an eye, knocked out every doctor in the room. The girl walked calmly to Hisoka's bedside, arms folded, and scoffed. "You got beat that badly? I didn't think you were such a loser." Still unconscious, Hisoka opened one eye, then slowly sat up with a weak smile. "You don't hold back at all, huh? Tianming's crazy strong. He saw through everything I planned. Losing to him was inevitable." Maki didn't respond. Instead, she knelt beside him, opened her medical kit, and pulled out a long silver needle. "I can't sew your arms back on while they're hanging by threads. I'll have to cut them off first." Hisoka smiled like it was nothing and gestured for her to continue. Without hesitation, Maki used her Nen thread to slice off both ruined arms cleanly. Then, with surgical precision, she began sewing the bones, blood vessels, tendons, and muscles back together. When she was finished, she bit the thread to sever it cleanly. Hisoka flexed his newly restored arms. "No matter how many times I watch you work, it's always a thing of beauty." Maki silently packed her tools. As she headed out the door, she spoke over her shoulder. "Transfer the medical fee to the account I gave you. And don't forget," the boss gave an order to regroup. Hisoka watched her go with a smirk, then muttered a vague response. Chapter 57. July 7, 1999, South Forest of Wallow City. Gon and Killua stood at attention in front of Wing, their postures straight and respectful. They already knew that Wing had been appointed as their Nen teacher by the Hunter Association, so they weren't surprised that today marked the end of their training together. Wing smiled and said, "Over the past 3 months, your Nen training has progressed well. From now on, as long as you continue to train diligently, it's only a matter of time before you become top-class Nen users." Gon nodded seriously. "Will we be able to see you again?" Wing laughed. "Haha. Gon, you're too serious. It's not like we're parting forever. though she still needs training, so I'll be staying here for a while. If you ever want to find me, just give me a call, or come visit anytime." Relieved by his easygoing response, Gon and Killua relaxed a little. Their eyes then shifted toward Tianming, who was standing off to the side, yawning with his hands in his pockets. Killua called out, "What about you, Tianming? Didn't you say you're leaving tomorrow? Don't you have anything to say to us before you go?" Tianming shrugged lazily. "Not really. I already gave you my number. Just call me if you need anything." He honestly couldn't understand why Wing had to make this such a big emotional moment. It wasn't like they wouldn't see each other again. Did they really need a dramatic farewell ceremony? Turning around, he raised one hand in a half-hearted wave and said, "I'm heading out. Stay in touch." Gon and the others could only smile helplessly at Tianming's usual lack of sentimentality. After spending time with him, they had gotten to know him a little better. Despite his cheerful personality and sociable behavior, Tianming was introverted at heart. He carried himself well in formal settings and could be charming when he wanted to, but in private, he preferred solitude and avoided crowds whenever he could. So, they let him go. Leaving the southern forest, Tianming began heading toward York New City. If the timeline followed the original plot, the Phantom Troop would soon appear there. He figured it wouldn't hurt to take a few heads and collect some bounties while he was at it. Just as he was about to leave the forest, a figure stepped out silently from behind a large tree, blocking his path. Tianming stopped and narrowed his eyes. "What do you want, Hisoka?" Hisoka grinned. "I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want first?" Tianming scoffed, unimpressed. "Say whatever you want. Just don't block my way." With a mock sigh, Hisoka said, "You really don't like me, huh? Fine, I'll keep it simple. The good news is this. The Phantom Troop's leader has finalized the date and location for their next move. They'll be gathering in York New City at the end of next month. If you're still interested in fighting the strong, you and I can team up against them." Tianming didn't even blink. He already knew all of this from his previous life. Hisoka's news only confirmed that the main storyline hadn't changed course. Seeing no reaction, Hisoka shrugged and moved on. As for the bad news, Castro challenged me a few days ago. Poor guy hasn't grown at all. I accidentally killed him. Tianming was surprised at first, but then he just sighed internally. He had a good impression of Castro, but the man had always been too prideful, too stubborn. Months ago, shortly after Tianming defeated Hisoka, he had offered to teach Castro the basics of Nen. But Castro refused. He declared that he would defeat both Hisoka and Tianming with his own strength. Tianming could only shake his head at such foolishness. Truthfully, Castro hadn't died at Hisoka's hands, he died because of his own pride. Even the rebellious Phantom Troop members knew better than to train Nen in isolation. But Castro had insisted on going it alone. If he just let go of his ego and accepted proper training, he wouldn't have ended up like that. Having heard both the good and bad news, Tianming walked past Hisoka with an indifferent look and said, "I'll head to York New first. Call me when the full troop is assembled. I was thinking of sticking around to see what Gon and I are doing tomorrow." Hisoka turned, only to find Tianming had already vanished without a sound. "A match?" he muttered with a sigh. Tianming boarded an airship and left Wallow City. After 3 days of flight, the vessel landed at an airport in eastern York New City. As he disembarked, the fresh air filled his lungs. After being cooped up in an airship for days, the cool breeze was invigorating. During the descent, he'd gotten a full view of York New from the air. The sprawling modern city triggered a sense of familiarity. It reminded him of his old life, back when he was just a salaryman in a big city. As he made his way out of the airport, people kept approaching him and trying to start conversations. But these weren't swooning fans or pretty girls, they were a crowd of local taxi drivers, all fighting to get passengers. Tianming rejected them all with a wave and used his observation hockey to scan the area. While even his enhanced senses couldn't cover the entire city, it didn't take long to locate his target, a high-end internet cafe that supported web access. Online games weren't widespread in this era, But that wasn't why he came. He had something else in mind: information. Logging in with his hunter license, he quickly found what he was looking for. A bounty posting. But this wasn't a typical bounty on a person, it was a recruitment request seeking professional hunters to participate in a mysterious game. Greed Island. That's right. Tianming's new target was the game Greed Island, or more specifically, someone inside the game. Greed Island was no ordinary game. It allowed non-users to physically enter the island world and collect rare cards through challenges and adventures. Upon completion, players could choose 3 cards from their collection to bring back into the real world. Tianming had a very specific reason for wanting in, and it had nothing to do with playing for fun. Chapter 58. Batra Group Headquarters, Chairman Batra's office. Tianming, dressed in his signature black and white martial arts uniform, sat calmly on the sofa. His large broadsword leaned against the armrest beside him. Across from him sat an elderly man with white hair and a face full of wrinkles, at least 65 years old. This was Chairman Batra, the wealthy sponsor who had posted the recruitment notice on the Hunter website, seeking professional hunters to enter Greed Island. Seated next to him was a dark-skinned man in his 40s, with a rather ordinary appearance but an unmistakable intensity hidden beneath his calm demeanor. This was Huizuela, a professional hunter with multiple Greed Island expeditions under his belt, well known among those familiar with the game. Both men silently scrutinized Tianming. Though they had already reviewed his profile on the Hunter website, they still harbored doubts about his strength. After all, there were no rigid levels or rankings in the Hunter world. A person's strength couldn't be fully gauged until they had clashed in real combat. Even though Tianming was said to have defeated Hisoka, that alone wasn't enough to convince them he could survive Greed Island. The 2 men exchanged glances, and then Huizuela leaned forward. "Show me your ren," he said. "Only once I confirm your strength will I agree to let you enter Greed Island." But Tianming didn't move. He hadn't come here to work for these men. He wasn't interested in joining their expedition or proving himself like a subordinate. What he wanted was simple, a complete set of Greed Island gaming equipment, so he could enter the game on his own terms. He sat up slightly and looked Batra in the eye. "I think you misunderstood. Although I found you through the recruitment notice, I'm not here to be part of your team. I came to get a full Greed Island game set up, for personal use." Hearing this, Huizuela immediately lost interest. He had assumed Tianming was here to join his team. But this guy just wanted to solo the game. He turned to Batra. Equipment sales weren't his domain. Only Batra could decide something like that. Batra let out a long sigh and looked at Tianming with a calm but dismissive tone. "I don't sell my gaming equipment to anyone. If that's your only reason for coming, then I suggest you leave." But Tianming didn't budge. Instead, he smiled faintly and said, "I think you are the one who misunderstood. I didn't say I wanted to buy it from you, I said I want to get a complete set of Greed Island equipment from you." Both Batra and Huizuela paused, confused by the phrasing. Before Batra could speak, Huizuela slammed the table and stood up, his aura flaring. "What's that supposed to mean? Can't get it through legal means, so you're going to steal it?" Tianming didn't flinch. He calmly observed the nen pressure radiating from Huizuela and nodded silently in approval. This guy was definitely strong, not weaker than the elite search team members back at the Sky Arena. He was worthy of being called a master in the Hunter world. But that was also the limit. Having spent years collecting cards in Greed Island, Huizuela had likely neglected his own growth. At best, his current strength might be enough to defeat a shadow beast in a one-on-one fight, but not much more. As Huizuela attempted to use aura intimidation, Tianming considered unleashing his own nen to put the man in his place. But before he could, Batra raised a hand. "Calm down, Huizuela." Huizuela grumbled but sat back down, still shooting a glare Tianming's way. Batra then looked at Tianming, who remained completely at ease, sipping tea like he owned the place. "Mr. Tianming," Batra said slowly, "you're aware that robbing someone's property is a crime, right? If you do something like that, the Hunter Association will come after you personally." I advise you to think carefully. Tianming chuckled. When did I say I was going to rob you? He set his cup down and continued. I'm proposing an exchange. I'll help you with something you need. In return, you'll give me the Greed Island setup. After that, we go our separate ways. I won't interfere with you, and you won't hear from me again. I don't need anything from you, Batra replied curtly. If that's all, then please, enjoy your tea. I'll be leaving now. He stood, intending to walk out of the office himself. After years of dealing with wild Nen users, he'd learned that forcibly kicking them out only led to unnecessary conflict. Better to remove himself from the situation and let the problem resolve on its own. He didn't believe this arrogant young man would stay in his office forever. But just as Batra reached the door, a calm voice spoke behind him. I can heal any injury, as long as the person is still breathing. Batra froze, his hand resting on the doorknob. He turned around slowly. What did you just say? I said, Tianming repeated, I can heal any external injury. Knife wounds, bullet wounds, car accidents, falls from buildings, as long as they're alive, I can heal them. Batra's expression turned serious, his wrinkled face tense with a mix of shock and hope. Are you telling the truth? Any injury? Tianming raised a hand. Let me clarify. I can heal external physical trauma, not illnesses. I can't cure cancer, leukemia, or internal diseases. But if it's a physical injury and the person's still alive, yes, I can fix it. Huizuela furrowed his brows. Something was off about Batra's sudden reaction. Clearly, his boss wanted to heal someone specific. But this was above his pay grade. He stayed quiet. Batra took a deep breath, then looked Tianming dead in the eye. If what you're saying is true, then I'll agree to your earlier request. But I want us to sign a contract. If you fail to do what you promised, I will pursue legal action through the Hunter Association. Tianming waved a hand nonchalantly. Sure. Even if my Nen ability doesn't work, I have other ways. After all, he already knew Batra's situation, thanks to the original story. This old man, nearly 70, was dating a young woman in her 20s. But after watching too many tragic romance dramas, the girl got into a car accident and ended up in a vegetative state. Batra had spent a fortune seeking doctors across the Hunter world, but no one could cure her. So, he set his hopes on Greed Island, aiming to obtain a special card called the Breath of the Archangel, rumored to heal any injury. And Tianming just so happened to possess something far better. Chapter 59. Maple Leaf Hospital, a private medical facility located in York New City, was widely recognized as one of the most advanced hospitals in the entire Hunter world. Its medical expertise was top tier, and that reputation came with an equally top-tier price tag. So much so that the hospital was often referred to as an aristocrat's clinic. Ordinary people couldn't afford even a single consultation here, let alone long-term hospitalization. Only the wealthiest of the wealthy could remain in care at this facility. In VIP room number 9 of the inpatient department, a young woman in her early 20s lay quietly in bed. Her blonde hair spilled over the pillow, a respirator was fitted to her pale face, and her eyes remained shut. She hadn't moved in a long time. In the room stood 4 people, Chairman Batra, Huizuela, the hunter he employed, Tianming, and the chief physician overseeing the girl's care. After giving a brief status report to Batra, the doctor sighed helplessly and exited the room. Once the door clicked shut, Batra turned anxiously to Tianming. We've signed the contract. As long as you can heal Lika, I'll not only give you a full set of Greed Island game equipment, I'll also pay you 500 billion as a reward. Please, start right away. Sensing his boss's rising desperation, Huizuela quickly stepped forward to stop him. Mr. Batra, wait a moment. I need to confirm something with Mr. Tianming first. Though Batra was impatient, he trusted Huizuela's judgment and gave a nod. Huizuela fixed his gaze on Tianming and asked with a serious tone, if I'm not mistaken, your healing ability is based on Nen, isn't it? Tianming nodded. That's correct. Huizuela continued, would you mind explaining how it works? I understand this is a sensitive topic for NAN users, but Lika's life is on the line. If we don't understand your method, we can't trust you with treatment. Badr had previously asked Ju Huela to find a NAN user capable of healing his girlfriend. But even after searching through all the skilled hunters he'd met, Ju Huela hadn't found a single one who could meet the requirement. Sure, plenty of enhancer-type NAN users could heal themselves, almost all of them could. But healing others? That was an entirely different story. Most enhancers developed their NAN for combat, not support. And even the rare users who could heal others typically had severe limitations, their abilities only worked on recent injuries. In Lika's case, she had been comatose for years. Those techniques wouldn't help. Tianming gave it some thought. Ju Huela was right, they wouldn't proceed without some level of explanation. And besides, his supreme bandage wasn't some simple trick. If anything, it deserved to be explained. He looked at Ju Huela. Stretch out your right hand. Ju Huela hesitated, then gritted his teeth and complied. Swoosh. Before he could react, a blur swept across the back of his hand. A shallow but clean 5-centimeter wound appeared across the skin. Ju Huela's eyes widened in shock. The cut wasn't deep, just a surface injury, but what stunned him was how fast it happened. Despite being a veteran hunter who had once reached the level of a true master, he hadn't even seen Tianming move. He resisted the urge to pull his hand away and instead waited calmly to see what would happen next. Tianming pulled a pre-prepared roll of bandages from his pocket and began wrapping Ju Huela's hand skillfully and efficiently. With each motion, he imbued the material with NAN. After just a few breaths, the wrapping was complete. Ju Huela's eyes went wide again. He could feel it, an itch, a warm tingling, almost like thousands of tiny needles gently dancing on his skin. But he recognized this sensation well. It was the feeling of rapid healing. A few minutes passed. Tianming unwrapped the bandage, revealing the back of Ju Huela's hand. The wound had disappeared completely. Well, almost completely. The skin wasn't perfectly smooth. Ju Huela had rough, calloused hands like a grizzly bear, but the injury itself was gone. He stared at his hand in amazement. Your ability definitely works, he admitted. But, Miss Lika has been unconscious for years. Will your healing still be effective? He paused, then added, also, your ability requires wrapping the body in bandages, right? Isn't that inconvenient, considering she's a woman? Standing to the side, Badr clenched his fists and lowered his gaze. Lika was the love of his life, and the idea of another man seeing her body filled him with anguish. But after a long, silent moment, he looked up, his voice hoarse but resolute. If you can save her, I don't care about those details. Lika wouldn't either. At that moment, he made peace with himself. If it took sacrificing his pride to save her, then so be it. Even if Tianming asked him to shoot himself, he might consider it. Tianming rolled his eyes. Who did these two think he was? He wasn't some perverted saint. In his previous life, sure, he'd fooled around, but now he had life return. With enough control over his body's dopamine secretion, he could stimulate pleasure with a thought. He didn't need to chase cheap thrills anymore. When you see someone calmly rolling their eyes in a corner, that's a true master of life return, absolute doge. More importantly, his ability didn't require him to bandage the patient personally. He could infuse NAN into the bandage itself ahead of time. Then, the nurses could wrap the patient's body in a separate room while he remained elsewhere. Simple. As for whether it would work on an old injury, he hadn't tested it before. But since they were already here, it was worth a try. If it didn't work, he'd fall back on his plan B, sneaking into Greed Island and bringing back the Breath of the Archangel card. He explained his method to the others, and Badr finally let out a long breath of relief. The chairman looked to Ju Huela for a final decision. The older hunter sighed and said, "At this point, we've got nothing to lose. Let's give it a try." And so, the treatment began. Several highly skilled nurses were brought into the ward. In the next room, Tianming and Ju Huela waited as Tianming passed the supreme bandage under the door. The process was about to begin. Chapter 60 3 hours passed in the blink of an eye. Not just Batra, but even Tianming and Zhu Huilo were starting to get impatient. How could it possibly take this long? Tianming thought as he absently tore apart the empty cardboard tube from the bandage roll. I've handled over 10 kilograms of bandages already, what the hell is going on in there? Even a full body wrap wouldn't take this long. Finally, just as he was starting to question reality, the door to the ward creaked open. The head nurse, hands on her hips and visibly annoyed, barked, "It's done. Come take a look." The 3 men immediately entered the room, and were greeted with an unexpected sight. Lika, now wearing a clean hospital gown, lay on the bed completely wrapped in bandages from neck to toe, her chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. She appeared to be sleeping soundly. But that wasn't what drew Tianming's attention. What caught his eye first was the trash can beside the bed, stuffed to the brim with used bandages. Bandages that still had his precious nin energy infused in them. He strode over, grabbed the head nurse by the wrist just as she was turning to leave, and pointed furiously at the overflowing bin. "These are all new bandages, why the hell did you throw them away?" He was livid. Each bandage was imbued with carefully prepared nen. It wasn't just medical gauze, it was his power. Tossing it out like garbage? Sacrilege. The head nurse, a tough-looking woman in her 40s with a naturally cranky expression, narrowed her eyes and nearly exploded. "I don't know what's wrong with you, insisting on passing in bandages through the crack of the door like some shady dealer. Do you know how annoying that was for us?" She puffed up her cheeks in exasperation. "We were exhausted changing your wraps over and over. You kept sending more and more. What were we supposed to do, stack them on the floor? And they were used, infected, and unsanitary. Of course we had to throw them out." Tianming paused, took a deep breath, and slowly released her wrist. He realized he'd gotten carried away. Sorry. I was just a little worked up. You go rest. Thanks for your help, ma'am." But the head nurse wasn't letting him off the hook. "Ma'am?" she roared, grabbing his collar. "Who the hell are you calling auntie, you oversized baboon? You think I won't knock you out just because you're big?" Just as she was about to start swinging, a couple of younger nurses rushed in and dragged her out of the ward, though not without her continuing to shout curses down the hallway. Tianming spat on the floor in frustration. Damn it, what luck. Judging by her temper, she's probably an enhancer type, he thought bitterly. Just then, a soft female voice interrupted his train of thought. "Where am I? What happened?" Tianming turned his head. Lika, still wrapped in bandages like a mummy, had sat up in bed. She looked around the room in confusion, clearly unsure of her situation. Batra, standing nearby, stared at her with trembling hands. His lips quivered before he could even get a full sentence out. Seeing his white hair and older appearance, Lika blinked in confusion. "Why is your hair all white? You look so much older." At that moment, Batra broke down. He lunged forward and embraced her, sobbing uncontrollably. Lika, still dazed, patted his back gently, as if trying to soothe him. The door opened again and the attending physician entered. Upon seeing Lika awake, he joined the moment, putting his hands together and clapping in joy. Zhu Huilo also applauded, his face filled with relief. It was a heartwarming, tear-jerking reunion. Except for one person. Standing in the corner with his hands in his pockets and a sour look on his face, Tianming sighed. "Seriously? You call this touching? Let's be real, this is just another tale of an old cow eating young grass." He looked away, his expression blank. "No matter how dramatic you make it, rich people's love stories don't move me one bit. If it hasn't been tested by poverty, it's meaningless. You think a dying billionaire can't find love? Please. He could cough up blood and still get a dozen proposals. Rich love is cheap." Unable to watch any more of this emotional soap opera, Tianming quietly slipped out of the ward, walked down the hall, and slumped into a chair to wait. "Whether Batra pays me now or in a week, I'm not worried," he thought. "His company isn't going anywhere. And I'm not afraid of getting stiffed." Another 2 hours passed. If it weren't for his observation hockey, which let him periodically check in on the ward. Tianming might have thought the old man was getting frisky in there after being celibate for decades. Finally, the ward door opened. Batra and Juehuela stepped out, and Tianming immediately stood up to meet them. Batra rushed forward, clasping Tianming's right hand with both of his and shaking it vigorously. "Mr. Tianming, thank you. I'll never forget this. From this day on, you are—" "Whoa, cut the speech," Tianming interrupted. "Do you want to give me the reward now, or after your girlfriend's completely healed?" Batra looked surprised, and Tianming took a moment to explain. "Lika's condition looks good, but don't be fooled. That's all due to the supreme bandage effect. She's still seriously injured underneath. If she moves around too much, the damage could worsen. In fact, if she pushes herself too far, she might collapse from internal trauma." He paused, then added seriously, "You need to keep an eye on her. She'll seem fine on the outside, but it's all temporary. She needs about a week to fully recover." Batra's expression turned grave. "Understood. I'll make sure she rests properly." He pulled out his phone. "I'll transfer the full amount to you immediately. And the Greed Island equipment, it's all yours. I don't need it anymore, so I'll give it to you." Tianming didn't protest. For Batra, the equipment was worthless now. The Greed Island game was dangerous, accessible only to Nen users, and filled with life-threatening situations. Selling the consoles might earn some money, but Batra was already rich beyond belief. To him, handing it all over to Tianming was just a way to repay a massive favor. Tianming accepted. "Not bad," he thought. "The job took a few days, but I got paid, got the gear, and didn't even have to step foot in the game to get started. This might be my smoothest job yet." Chapter 61. A few moments later, the 500 billion genie transfer was successfully completed. After the remittance, Batra apologized, saying that it was a bit late in the day, and that there were still a few hired hunters currently playing Greed Island on his equipment. Tianming would need to wait a few days until those hunters logged out before he could receive the full setup. Tianming didn't mind. He had plenty of time on his hands, and staying in town for a few extra days wasn't a problem. After exchanging contact information, he turned to leave. Batra stayed behind in the ward to care for Lika, and Juehuela chose to remain as her bodyguard, so neither of them came out to see Tianming off. Just as he was about to get off the elevator, he noticed something on the map near the stairwell. There was a restaurant on the first floor. Apparently, it served food to the entire hospital and, judging by the location and the environment, it wasn't cheap. But that didn't bother Tianming. He was hungry. Rich people probably wouldn't touch cafeteria food like this anyway, he thought. Too low class for them. But I'm starving, and food is food. He took the elevator to the 12th floor, and the aroma of fresh rice hit him as soon as the doors opened. Smells good, he thought. Let's eat. Just as he was walking toward the restaurant, a long-haired young man on crutches approached from the opposite direction. Tianming froze. The moment he laid eyes on the man, he stopped in his tracks and blinked in disbelief. Then he chuckled bitterly. I must be hallucinating. Seeing a dead guy in broad daylight. That's new. He could even hear the crutches clicking against the floor, very realistic. Maybe I should cut back on dopamine before bed. He stepped to the side to let the figure pass, treating him like a mirage. But then. Zhao Tianming, you've already seen me. Why are you pretending not to know me? Tianming stopped cold. Okay, what? Hallucinations can talk now? And with his voice? The crutch-wielding man snorted in annoyance. Didn't you hear me talking to you? Why are you acting like a stranger? Tianming blinked, then took a long breath. Slowly, his mind connected the dots. Wait. Don't tell me. This isn't a ghost or a hallucination. It's a clone? In the hunter world, a powerful Nen user with strong convictions or grudges could create phenomena known as post-mortem Nen. When a person with an intense will dies, their Nen ability might persist, or even grow stronger, after death. Tianming figured Hiwashi Dulong must have been killed by Hisoka right after releasing a Nen clone. That would explain why the clone remained after his death. Stepping forward, Tianming clapped a hand on the young man's shoulder and said solemnly, "Well, it's good you left something behind. I hope you'll live on in your original self's place. But let the grudge against Hisoka go, alright?" Huwashi Dulong stared blankly, his face full of question marks. What the hell is this guy even talking about? Clone? Revenge? What's he on? After a few more minutes of confusing and irrelevant back and forth, they both came to the same conclusion at the same time. This guy's an idiot. A little while later, they were sitting together in a private booth inside the hospital restaurant. Tianming stabbed a piece of meat with his chopsticks and glared across the table. "So you're not a clone? Why didn't you say so earlier? You trying to mess with me on purpose?" Huwashi Dulong slammed the table. "How is it my fault you're a moron?" Turns out, after losing to Tianming and Hisoka last time, Dulong had left Sky Arena for intense, hellish training, pushing his nen and martial arts to new heights in hopes of someday defeating both of them. A few weeks ago, Hisoka tracked him down in York New City and challenged him to a death match, this time off the official records. Dulong, believing his training had paid off, accepted without hesitation. He lost again. His right leg was shattered during the fight, and he wasn't even sure if it could be saved. As he told the story, his emotions boiled over. He slammed the table in frustration. Crack! The tabletop snapped clean in half, dishes and bowls clattering to the floor. Tianming snatched his plate of meat away just in time, chewing calmly as if nothing had happened. This guy's a walking disaster. Always flipping tables like a crow. Lucky I saved the good stuff. Between bites, he muttered, "That bastard Hisoka told me you were dead. Said you got beat so bad your butt was left hanging from a tree." Dulong's face darkened instantly. He pointed at his right leg and sighed. Honestly, he wasn't wrong. I may as well be dead like this. What's the point of living crippled? Tianming didn't respond immediately. Inside, though, he was smiling. What a coincidence. My telepathic ability just so happens to heal injuries. And this guy walked right into my lap. But he didn't offer treatment right away. He had a different idea. "Dulong," he asked casually, "your talent isn't any worse than Hisoka's, right?" Dulong looked confused but nodded hesitantly. "Then why did he beat you so badly? You ever think about that?" Dulong fell silent. A year ago, he would have immediately blamed trickery or underhanded tactics. But after meeting Tianming, after watching him crush 5 Nen users single-handedly, he realized the gap between them wasn't as simple as dirty tactics. He'd trained alone for years, yet his Nen fundamentals were still sloppy. Meanwhile, Tianming, who'd only studied under Netero for a short time, already had far better Nen control and application. Even at his peak, before his leg was destroyed, Dulong didn't believe he could beat that same 5-man team Tianming had handled with ease. He looked down, his shoulders slumped. Tears rolled silently down his face. Gone was the proud martial artist who trained in isolation. Gone was the stubborn lone wolf who refused help. He now understood just how far behind he really was. At that moment, all of his pride, all of his persistence, shattered like the leg he could no longer walk on. Seeing this, Tianming didn't drag it out. He stood, walked over to him, and smirked. "Alright, enough of that. Let's cut to the chase. Take off your clothes." Dulong blinked. "What? I want to see what's left of your injuries," Tianming replied matter-of-factly. "Don't worry, I'm not interested in your body. I'm here to fix your leg." Chapter 62. Tianming stood there blankly, holding a roll of bandages in one hand. All he wanted to do was use the supreme bandage to heal the guy, so why was Wing reacting like he was about to be assaulted? After thinking over what he'd just said, Tianming chuckled and scratched his head. "Dulong, you've misunderstood. I asked you to take off your clothes for treatment, not whatever you're thinking." Using his crutch, Wing pushed himself further back, then pointed at the bandage and said warily, "Don't try to fool me." Then explained this. "It's just a bandage. My Nen ability heals people by wrapping their bodies in these. Once I get them on you, you'll understand." Wing wasn't convinced. Don't give me that crap. My right leg is what's injured, so why do I need to strip? You're a pervert just like Hisoka. No wonder you two get along so well. Probably hang out all of the time doing God knows what. Tianming slapped his forehead, visibly exasperated. Looks like talking this out won't work. Time to use the direct approach. With a weird grin, he walked toward Wing. Wing backed up in panic and even summoned a Nen clone, but it was no use. After a brief, and chaotic, struggle, Wing was left lying in a chair with a 1,000-yard stare, his hospital gown reduced to tatters. A fresh layer of bandages covered his upper body, but it didn't seem to lift his spirits one bit. Tianming dusted off his hands with satisfaction, completely unfazed by Wing's lifeless gaze. "Don't play dead," he said. "Get up and try walking." Wing turned to him with the look of someone whose soul had left his body. "You're asking me to stand? If I could stand, I would have kicked your teeth in by now." But then, something felt different. The stabbing pain in his right leg, the one that had been shattered in his fight with Hisoka, was gone. Stunned, he slowly pushed himself up using his good leg and crutch. Then, cautiously, he let his injured leg touch the floor. His heart skipped a beat. He took a small step. It didn't hurt. He could walk. How? How is this possible? He racked his brain for an answer, but it made no sense. Even if Tianming's Nen ability could heal, wrapping a bandage around your upper body and somehow fixing your leg? That wasn't science. That wasn't logic. That was insanity. Nen abilities were supposed to reflect the user's subconscious values, but what kind of twisted, delusional worldview did Tianming have to develop something like this? Still, confusion gave way to emotion. Wing's eyes welled up. He looked at Tianming, bowed his head, and spoke from the heart. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Tianming waved it off. "It's nothing. But listen, your leg isn't fully healed yet. So no training, no sparring, no jumping around. Take it easy or you'll make it worse." The two weren't exactly friends, not yet. They'd only met a couple of times. But Tianming had always respected Wing's character. The first time they met, Wing had the chance to strike him while he was injured, but didn't. Tianming didn't forget that. Now, by healing Wing, they were even. And maybe even something more. With his leg working again, Wing returned to his usual, upbeat self. It was the first time Tianming had seen his true personality. When they first met, Hisoka's provocations had made them enemies. The second time, Wing had been too injured and too depressed to show his true self. But now? Now Tianming could see the real him. And he liked what he saw. Straightforward. Loyal. Honest. It reminded him of the kind of people he used to know back in the One Piece world, people you could trust in battle and in life. Just as Tianming was about to leave, Wing suddenly called out awkwardly, "Hey! You mentioned once that you'd help me train my Nen. Does that offer still stand?" His voice was hesitant, almost nervous. "I was too stubborn back then. But now I really want to learn the right way. If it's too much trouble, I'm willing to pay." He started to bow in apology, but Tianming stopped him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Ha ha ha. You don't have to be so formal. We've already fought? That makes us comrades in my book. Besides, it's just the basics, we're not talking about a master-disciple ceremony here." Then Tianming's eyes lit up as an idea came to him. "But actually, someone else might be joining your training too. You don't mind sharing, right?" Wing shook his head. "Of course not. I'm the one asking for help here." Tianming thought about the timeline. The underground auction in Yorknu wouldn't begin for another month and a half. Wing's leg would be fully healed in about a week, which meant he'd have a full month to train. Wing already had a few years of experience with Nen, so he could grasp the theory quickly. The real question was the other person. Tianming pulled out his phone and made a call. A few rings later, a familiar voice answered. "Yo. Tianming. What's up?" It was Leorio. Tianming smiled. "How've you been? Did the association manage to track you down?" On the other end, Leorio sounded smug. "Of course they did. I've already learned 10, Zetsu, and Dren. Just need to master Hatsu, and I'll be ready to develop my own ability. My Nen training's basically done. Tianming raised an eyebrow. Faster than I expected. He invited Leorio to come to York New and train with Wing, but Leorio declined. Sorry, Tianming. I'm right in the middle of studying for the medical qualification exam. Give me another month, and I'll have time. Tianming sighed. Typical Leorio. Always had his priorities in order. They chatted a bit longer before ending the call. Since Leorio couldn't come, Tianming didn't push it. For Leorio, getting certified as a doctor was more important than anything else, including Nen training. Chapter 63, 5 days later, Yukeksan Airship Passenger Terminal. A medium-sized airship touched down in the open lot. The hatch opened, and a white-haired man in his early 50s stepped off. It was Badoro. Ever since Tianming had saved his life during the Hunter exam, the older man had felt both indebted and curious. A few days ago, Tianming had contacted him to ask about his Nen training progress, and invited him to come train together. Badoro had since been diligently studying Nen. After the exam, he'd found a hunter who specialized in Nen instruction, and under half a year of focused training, his abilities had improved by leaps and bounds. Now, he felt confident enough to believe he could go toe-to-toe with someone like Tianming, or even Hisoka. He would no longer be the helpless victim who had to endure Hisoka's humiliation, nor the easy mark nearly taken out by Killua, a kid not even in his teens. As soon as he exited the terminal, he pulled out his phone and called Tianming. After getting the hotel address, he flagged a cab and arrived at a high-end hotel downtown. With the help of a staff member, he found Tianming's suite. Just as he raised his hand to knock, the door swung open from the inside, and Tianming's voice called out from within. "Come in. Shut the door behind you." Badoro stepped inside, and his eyes nearly popped out of his head. In the center of the room, Tianming was doing one-handed finger push-ups, balancing upside down on a sharpened steel spike, while holding a 500-pound barbell with his feet. The barbell was being held upside down by his feet, while doing one-finger push-ups. Utterly stunned, Badoro immediately activated Gyo, focusing Nen into his eyes to analyze the energy. What he saw floored him, an unbelievable concentration of aura, all channeled into the very tip of Tianming's index finger. It wasn't just about control. It was about sheer power. His aura volume was monstrous. Tianming noticed him, kicked the barbell into the air, dropped down from the spike with a clean flip, caught the weight overhead, and smiled. "Why didn't you give me a heads up? I could have come to the terminal and picked you up." Badoro straightened his back and replied with respectful humility. "You already did me a great favor by inviting me to train with you. I couldn't trouble you further." Just then, Badoro noticed someone else in the room. A man was sitting cross-legged silently in the far corner, completely motionless, almost statue-like. If Badoro hadn't happened to glance that way, he might never have noticed him. "Wait. I didn't sense anything when I came in. Not even a trace of aura." He was stunned. That kind of stealth was elite. The technique was clearly in, the advanced concealment skill his teacher had told him about, far beyond basic Zetsu. Not only could it suppress aura, it could also mask the user's vital signs. It was perfect for ambushes or hiding in combat. The confidence Badoro had brought with him, thinking he was on par with Tianming, shattered instantly. Even the man he didn't recognize had Nen control more refined than his own. So much for catching up. I'm still way behind them. Tianming waved him over and called out to the man in the corner. "Come here, Dulong. Let's take a break." Wing, now fully recovered, stood and walked over. His previously shattered leg had healed faster than expected, likely due to his natural enhancement-type constitution. With his usual blank expression, Wing approached. Badoro mirrored his demeanor, equally stoic. The two exchanged nods and shook hands after Tianming introduced them. They both turned to Tianming, silently waiting for his instructions. Tianming cleared his throat. At first, I just wanted to find a few solid fighters to train with, sharpen our skills through combat. But then it hit me, all three of us are enhancement types. So I figured, why not form a group? A casual organization, only for enhancement type users, where we train together, help each other improve, and spar often. I'll be the leader. You two are founding members. What do you think? The idea was spontaneous, but there was logic behind it. Tianming's unique ability evolved best through high-intensity combat. Fighting non-enhancement types didn't yield the same effect. They couldn't break his defenses, so there was no challenge. Originally, he had planned to recruit Gon and Killua. Gon was pure enhancement, and Killua, a transmutation type, was close enough. Both were strong, and their personalities were trustworthy. But Wing, their instructor, had objected. He insisted they were too young, still in foundational training, and not ready for intense sparring. Tianming had to admit that made sense. No matter how talented they were still kids, barely 13. It was too soon for full contact, high-stakes training. Better to wait until they matured physically. But Badoro and Wing were different. Both were adults in their prime, with tough physiques, and thick skins. Thanks to Tianming's supreme bandage, they could spar recklessly without fearing permanent injury. Neither of them agreed right away. They asked a few clarifying questions. What was the purpose of the group? Would there be fees or obligations? Tianming answered plainly. No fees. No obligations. Join or leave whenever you want. No ranks, no missions, no politics. We're here for one reason only, to fight and improve. It's freer than a gym membership. Hearing this, both men relaxed. They, like many enhancement types, disliked bureaucracy and restrictions. Gon was the same way. He refused to work under anyone or be bound by titles. With no objections left, the new enhancement-only sparring group was officially born. To welcome Badoro, Tianming arranged a room for him in the same hotel, right next door to his and Wing's. That way, they could easily train together, eat together, and start sparring sessions on a moment's notice. Chapter 64. Greed Island, Desolate Plains. Three figures materialized from thin air. After landing, they looked around cautiously. They were Tianming, Wing, and Badoro. The trio hadn't come here to collect cards or play the game properly. Instead, their goal was training, taking advantage of Greed Island's vast, uninhabited terrain to practice Nen techniques in combat. Tianming had visited once before, back when Wing was still recovering. He'd explored a little, found a convenient save point, and then exited the game. He wasn't interested in playing per se. This wasn't some virtual MMO, just an isolated island within the real world. To him, it held no novelty. As before, Tianming activated his observation haki. His sensory range had expanded significantly along with his overall strength. Within moments, the entirety of Greed Island was mapped out in his mind. And yet, still no sign of the person he was looking for. Just like last time, although there were plenty of Nen users scattered across the island, the man he sought wasn't among them. Tianming frowned. He was looking for Razor, one of the game masters of Greed Island. Logically, Razor should always be on the island, available for encounters and events. With Tianming's observation haki, he should have been easy to detect. But even after scanning the entire island twice, there was nothing. Is he always in hiding? That's unlikely. Observation haki tracks life energy, not aura alone. Even if Razor used it to mask his presence, Tianming should have still detected the presence of life itself. Eventually, Tianming sighed and retracted his haki. Looks like Razor only appears when a specific trigger is activated. He must not be idling around the island like a regular NPC. While Tianming stood silently processing this, Wing and Badoro exchanged confused glances. Then, Tianming turned to them. I scanned the whole area. No players, no NPCs nearby. We won't be disturbed. We can train freely here. Both nodded, and their training officially began. The first activity was a sparring match, a 2-on-1. Tianming held back most of his strength to test the other skills. It would also help him tailor the next stage of training. As he'd expected, the problem revealed itself almost immediately. Both Wing and Badoro had solid combat instincts and decent nen fundamentals, but their mastery of Ken, reinforcement, was poor. That was an issue. For close-range fighters, especially enhancement types, Ken was essential. Proper mastery of Ken could exponentially increase their defensive and offensive power in direct combat. With it, they could break into the ranks of elite fighters. So, Tianming halted the spar and decided to focus their training on refining Ken. But just as he was about to announce the change of plans, Badoro raised his voice. "Wait, Mr. Tianming. Since we're sparring seriously, let me show you my nen ability first." Tianming raised an eyebrow. He hadn't expected Badoro to have already developed a unique ability. It had only been about 6 months since the Hunter exam. That level of progress was impressive, putting him on par with Kurapika, Gon, and Killua in terms of development speed. In fact, both Gon and Killua had already awakened their abilities under Tianming's subtle guidance. Gon stuck to his classic Jajangkan, and Killua had developed his electric aura. Now, Tianming was curious to see what kind of ability Badoro, who had originally died during the exam, would bring to the table. Badoro removed his shirt, revealing a body covered in battle scars. He clenched his fists and began to growl lowly. "When I was young, I got lost in the forest, and ran into a massive tiger. Even with my martial arts training, I couldn't match its raw physicality, its size, its muscles, its bones. I was powerless." Tianming and Wing stood quietly, listening. Tianming's face gradually began to twist into an unreadable expression. "That experience changed me," Badoro continued. "I realized how weak humans truly are. The image of that tiger, so majestic, so terrifying, burned itself into my memory." As he spoke, Badoro's skin began to shift. Coarse hair sprouted from his pores. His muscles expanded. His height surged upward. He sprouted claws, fangs. His body grew until he towered over them at over 4 meters tall, a hulking half-human, half-tiger creature. Wing was visibly shaken by the transformation. The sheer aura radiating from Badoro made sweat bead down his face. "This is the form that embodies my true power," Badoro bellowed. "I've fused the tiger's body with my years of martial mastery. This strength will shake the entire world." Roar! His feral roar echoed across the plains. Tianming, meanwhile, stood perfectly still, expression dark, eyes narrowed. To Badoro, that look seemed like frustration. Jealousy, even. Maybe Tianming was bitter at being surpassed. "Don't be discouraged, Tianming," Badoro said with a smug smile. "Nen abilities are tied to innate qualities. If you envy this, well, you can always create your own." He didn't finish the sentence. Because at that moment, Tianming's foot connected with his massive tiger head face, launching the 4-meter beast into the dirt. Badoro hit the ground hard, stunned. He hadn't even seen the attack coming. Just as he started to sit up, Tianming slipped off his shoe, slammed it down onto Badoro's oversized head, and began stomping him while cursing furiously. "Did I tell you to turn into a tiger? Huh? Who told you to do that? Do it again, I dare you." Wing watched with a completely blank expression. Because apparently, the thing Tianming hated most in life was tigers. Backstory flash. In his previous life, Tianming had once bought a natural-type devil fruit at an underground auction. It was none other than Ace's flame fruit. Everyone said even dogs wouldn't eat that fruit anymore. But being a Logia-type devil fruit, it was still leagues better than those garbage-tier Zoan fruits that didn't even appear in encyclopedias. And yet, when he peeled open the auction box, expecting to see the flame fruit, what did he get? A Zoan-type tiger fruit. That was the day Tianming's hatred for tigers was born. Chapter 65. This incident was an eternal scar in his heart. He originally wanted to forget about it and move on, but he didn't expect that this bastard, Badoro, would turn himself into a tiger again. "Did I ask you to turn into a tiger?" You go ahead and turn into a tiger again, huh? Bang bang bang. Badoro was dumbfounded. He hadn't expected Tianming to suddenly blow up like this, and even less that he'd be so absurdly strong. Even in his transformed state, Badoro was completely helpless. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't break free from Tianming's grip. He kept kicking at the ground and twisting his body to escape, but Tianming's monstrous strength pinned him down again and again. Eventually, Badoro lay there in resignation, letting Tianming continue to pummel his cat head without resistance. After seeing that Badoro had stopped resisting, Tianming finally let out a long breath, withdrew his hand, and stood off to the side with a dangerous glare. Next time, don't transform into a tiger in front of me. Got it? Badoro nodded weakly. Though Tianming's punches had been painful, they only caused superficial wounds. But what hurt even more than the blows was the rejection of his Nen ability. This was a power he had developed after much thought, a combination of human martial skill and tiger physiology. He had always believed it was a perfect synthesis. But to Tianming, it was worthless. That hurt far worse than any punch. While he was still stunned, his transformation dissolved and he returned to human form. Just then, Hanzo walked over and extended a hand to him. Badoro was surprised. He and Hanzo had only met briefly and weren't close. Still, he reached up and accepted the offered hand. You're Badoro, right? Your Nen ability is really powerful. It only seems weak compared to Tianming. Don't let it get to you. Badoro was genuinely moved. Though he was an older man, he didn't have many people he considered real friends. Hanzo's straightforward, sincere words lifted his spirits. From that day forward, the three of them began training in advanced Nen techniques on Greed Island. During the first few days, Tianming focused on teaching them how to maintain and extend the kin state. Once they could hold it for 30 minutes straight, he moved on to actual sparring. Hanzo and Badoro would both enter their full kin state and take on Tianming 2-on-1. Tianming, meanwhile, would limit himself to the 10 state to even the playing field. He had no choice. With his current strength, even using just Ren was too much for either of them to handle. Sparring with them while fully powered would be meaningless. Still, suppressing his strength wasn't a waste of time. In fact, it led Tianming to gain deeper insight into his first Nen ability, Yin-Yang Balancer. At first, he noticed something odd. When he turned all of his haki into Nen and sparred with Hanzo and Badoro, his body would grow stronger after recovering from injuries. He realized that fully committing to Nen mode boosted his physical stats post-battle. This seemed to be a trait of his memories of past lives ability. By entering a full Nen state, he could trigger that ability's strength-boosting effect. It was the most efficient way for him to train. He decided to name the state Nen mode and resolved to use it whenever he sparred for growth. However, the mode had its drawbacks. Converting all his haki into Nen actually made him weaker overall. For instance, if his haki and Nen were both at 100% capacity, the Yin-Yang Balancer could only convert 60% of haki into usable Nen, because the ability was fundamentally a conjuration-type power. As an enhancer, Tianming could only draw out 60% of a conjuration ability's full strength. Also, that 60% wasn't of his full Nen, it was of his haki, which turned out to be much smaller in quantity than he had thought. He'd always believed his haki reserves were massive because it suppressed most other Nen users, but now he realized that wasn't the case. The quality of his haki was high, but the quantity was less than half of his Nen. This revelation made him rethink things. If haki could be turned into Nen, then the reverse must also be true. And so, he created a second combat style, haki mode. This was his most powerful battle state. Since his Nen was more than double the size of his haki pool, converting even 60% of it resulted in haki levels far beyond his normal baseline. In haki mode, he could unleash far greater power. And it wasn't a linear increase, either. Doubling your raw power could make you 10 times as dangerous in a real fight. So now, Tianming had 3 modes of energy usage. Nen mode, for training and long-term growth. Injuries taken in this state would trigger increased physical stats post-recovery. Haki mode, for serious combat. Converts Nen to Haki for maximum raw power. Balance mode, his default state. Uses both energies together for versatility and adaptability. Each had its pros and cons, but now Tianming could switch between them depending on the situation. With these three modes and sparring partners who could keep up, his growth was accelerating like never before. Chapter 66. Three figures darted across a desolate plain, their movements sharp and swift. Each time they clashed, a dull thud echoed out, followed by the howling gust of displaced air and the shattered remains of the surrounding landscape. After another round of fierce combat, the three separated once again. Standing together were Hanzo and Badoro, both panting heavily. Their nen radiated intensely, their bodies drenched in sweat. Long strands of hair clung to their foreheads, dripping steadily onto the ground. Though their bodies were still wrapped in white bandages, the injuries beneath had fully healed as of the day before. They had simply forgotten to remove them in the rush to resume training. These two had undergone hellish training over the past month, constantly maintaining ken and engaging in combat. Whenever they were injured, Tianming would patch them up with his supreme bandage. As soon as they were well enough, they'd be thrown back into the fray. In just 1 month, they'd suffered more injuries than in the rest of their lives combined. And yet, it was worth it. Today, the two had maintained ken for over 3 hours straight in combat. Against a peer, they might have lasted even longer. But standing across from them, unscathed and smiling, was Zhao Tianming. He nodded with genuine approval. The growth of both Hanzo and Badoro had exceeded his expectations. Hanzo's talent wasn't surprising. Anyone who caught Hisoka's interest had to be exceptional. Kuraro, Gon, even himself, all chosen by Hisoka. Hanzo belonged in that category. Badoro, on the other hand, had surprised him. He had assumed the older fighter, only just beginning his nen training, would have average talent at best. But Badoro absorbed techniques faster than Tianming imagined. His nen control had even surpassed Hanzo's at points. Then Tianming remembered, during the hunter exam, Netero had compared Badoro to himself, both martial artists who hit their stride later in life. Seeing that the two were still on guard, Tianming raised his hand to signal the end of training. That's enough. We'll stop here for today. Pack your things, we're leaving Greed Island. They were slightly taken aback, then recalled Tianming had mentioned the Ukexen underground auction. It was already August 8th, only a few days before the event. They withdrew their oars with some reluctance. In truth, they wished they could stay on Greed Island indefinitely. The daily improvement they'd experienced was addictive. As Hanzo packed up their gear, Tianming suddenly closed his eyes and activated his observation haki, sweeping across the entire Greed Island once again. Nothing. Still no sign of Razor. He sighed. Just like the last time, there wasn't a trace of him. It seemed Razor only appeared when certain conditions were triggered. Until then, he must have been hidden away somewhere off the island. Tianming decided to set Razor aside for now and focus on the Phantom Troop. The troop was no joke. 13 members total. Excluding the traitor Hisoka and support roles like Kortopi and Pakunoda, the rest were all elite nen users. In fact, the only known group stronger than them was the Hunter Association's Zodiacs. Just thinking about going up against such powerful opponents had Tianming's blood boiling. Hunting them would be thrilling, his fists itched for action. The trio returned to the real world via a save point. They reappeared in their hotel room in Ukexen. Tianming wasted no time, he picked up his phone and tried calling Kurapika. The number you dialed is currently unavailable. Please try again later. Tianming chuckled to himself. Kurapika really was a model employee, turning off his phone during work hours. But more likely, he just didn't want to drag Gon and Killua into his personal vendetta against the spiders. Still, Tianming couldn't help thinking, Kurapika's biting off more than he can chew. If it weren't for Gon, Killua, Leorio, and Hisoka's betrayal, in the original story, Kurapika would have been slaughtered. Materialization types were always intense. The cautious ones, like Nav, scared themselves to death. The bold ones, like Kurapika, pushed themselves until they burned out. Tianming felt lucky to be a battle-happy enhancement type. No overthinking, just eat, sleep, and punch hard. Since Kurapika wasn't answering, Tianming called Gon instead. At that moment, Gon and Killua had just met up with Leorio. All three had bought shiny new Beetle phones and were admiring their purchases when Gon's phone rang. Seeing it was Tianming, he answered eagerly. "Hey, Tianming. We just got to Yukixen. Where are you?" An hour later, Gon, Killua, and Leorio arrived at Tianming's hotel. The person who opened the door was none other than Badoro, the very man they had met during the Hunter exam. After a quick reunion, he welcomed them in. Inside the living room, Hanzo was sitting calmly. Gon and Killua had never met him before, but they knew of him. Hisako had mentioned him in passing. Killua smirked and challenged him. "I heard you got wrecked by Hisako and tried to get revenge, but he ghosted you. Rough." Hanzo's expression darkened instantly. His aura exploded, shattering nearby glasses and even the TV. Leorio frowns. This guy felt even stronger than the Hisako he'd met half a year ago. Even Leorio's Nen teacher didn't radiate this kind of pressure. Killua, however, didn't flinch. He met Hanzo's intensity with his own, electric sparks flickering in his aura. Neither backed down. Gon said nothing. He trusted Killua's judgment. He wouldn't provoke someone without a reason. After a moment, both retracted their auras. Killua tucked his hands into his pockets and smiled. "You're not bad. I'm Killua Zoldyck. Let's get along." Hanzo cracked a smile. "Hanzo. I look forward to it." Chapter 67. Tianming could sense the displeasure simmering inside Hanzo. Clearly, he did not like Killua. Honestly, it was rare to find someone in the Hunter world who didn't like Killua. Hanzo was a bit of an anomaly. Once everyone had introduced themselves, they moved into the living room. Each person grabbed a chair, forming two opposing lines facing each other like a battle council. Gon, Killua, and Leorio sat in a row on one side. Opposite them sat Hanzo and Badoro. All eyes then turned to Tianming, who was seated at the head of the group. Tianming couldn't help but smirk. He felt like one of those overblown characters from TV dramas, sitting in the leader's chair, like Song Jiang of the Yangshan Outlaws or Yuan Shao from the 18 Warlords. Any second now, some soldier would probably barge in, kneel before him, and announce, "The Ant King is challenging us outside, leader. What shall we do?" Shaking away the ridiculous thoughts, Tianming cleared his throat and got straight to the point. "I know everyone came to York New City with their own goals, but I've gathered you here for something important. I received intel that the A-rank criminal group known as the Phantom Troop is regrouping in York New. Their target is the underground auction hosted by the 10 Dons at the end of the month." Everyone's eyes widened. While Hanzo and Badoro had been training under Tianming's guidance, this was the first time he'd mentioned anything about the Phantom Troop. Still, they didn't react with fear, just curiosity. After all the grueling training they had endured with Tianming, they no longer saw the troop as some untouchable legend. Gon and Killua had similar reactions, surprised at first, but calm. Leorio, on the other hand, nearly leapt out of his seat. "What? Why didn't you tell me earlier? That's a terrorist group of nothing but A-rank criminals. It's already near the end of the month, so that means they're already here in Yorknu." Tianming wasn't surprised. This was the normal reaction for someone who wasn't used to being around monsters. After all, if a terrorist group announced they were in your city, you'd be panicking too. Once Leorio had calmed down a little, Tianming continued, "The reason I brought you here is to form a team and take them out completely. After all the training we've done, I believe our combined strength is more than enough to deal with the Phantom Troop." Leorio didn't jump again, but instead sat back down. He clenched his fists, looking down, clearly torn. Tianming noticed his hesitation and softened his tone. "Leorio, I don't think you should get directly involved. With your current strength, it'll be hard for you to fight at this level. I'll arrange for you to lay low during the operation. Once we succeed, you can rejoin us." Gon chimed in to back Tianming's plan, but Leorio raised his head. resolute. Even if I can't fight directly, I can still help out. The troops slaughtered Kurapika's clan. I want to do what I can to help stop them. Tianming nodded and agreed. While Leorio wasn't combat ready, he could still assist from the sidelines. Seeing that even Leorio had committed, Hanzo and Badoro naturally agreed as well. If anything, they were eager to test themselves against the infamous spider and see how strong those criminals really were. Killua was about to nod too, but stopped when he noticed Gon hadn't said anything yet. He turned to Gon, curious what his friend was thinking. Tianming noticed the dynamic. Killua was clearly the more strategic thinker, but Gon's decisions always took precedence. If Gon wanted something, Killua would go along without question. Honestly, Tianming thought, it's a shame Gon's not a girl. They'd make a perfect couple. Gon, still frowning slightly, asked, "What's the bounty for taking out a phantom troop member?" Tianming chuckled. "So it's about money, huh? That's easier to deal with. The current bounties aren't that high," he explained. "Most of the troops' members are elusive. Only a few even have confirmed identities, so the payouts aren't amazing. But after they hit the auction, the 10 dons will absolutely increase the rewards. We'll get a much bigger payday then." Gon's eyes lit up. His goal in Yorknu was to earn money to buy a copy of Greed Island, the game tied to his father's past. He believed completing the game would lead him to Jing. He eagerly asked if the Phantom Troops' combined bounty would be enough to buy a Greed Island copy. Tianming furrowed his brows, thinking it through. "You don't seem to understand the market. Greed Island is being auctioned here in Yorknu, yes, but the price is astronomical. Even if the 10 dons increase the bounty to, say, 20 billion per troop member, that's only 260 billion in total." He gave Gon a pointed look. "And even if we wiped out the entire Phantom Troop, which would require everyone's effort, you wouldn't get all the money to yourself. So no, it's not enough." Gon's hopeful flame fizzled out. Watching Tianming seriously break this down for Gon, Hanzo and Badoro could barely keep straight faces. They both knew something Gon didn't, that Bador had already given Tianming dozens of Greed Island consoles and game rings. Hanzo and Badoro both glanced at a nearby door, not far behind Gon, where those items were safely stashed away. Chapter 68. After a moment, Gon broke free from his disappointment, looked up at Tianming with a smile. "It doesn't matter if the bounty isn't enough. We'll just find another way to earn money. I heard a wealthy man named Badora is hiring pro hunters for a Greed Island commission. I'll just go sign up." Killua stepped forward, patted Gon on the shoulder, and said, "I'll go with you. With our strength, we can definitely pass the screening and enter Greed Island." At this, Wing couldn't help but interject, turning to Tianming with a sigh. "All right, stop messing with them already." Tianming shot Wing a glare. He was ruining the fun. Tianming had wanted to toy with these two kids for a bit longer, but the moment was gone now. Gon and Killua, finally noticing Tianming's odd behavior, and the smirks from Wing and Badoro behind him, started to piece it together. Even if they were a bit dense sometimes, they weren't dumb. Tianming walked over to a closed door nearby. "Actually, your idea of applying to Batoro might not work. He stopped recruiting hunters over a month ago, so that route's closed." Gon looked visibly disappointed, but then Tianming added, "That said, Badora and I are pretty close. Last time we met, he gave me a bunch of useless junk. I was thinking of throwing it out." He opened the room. From where they stood, Gon and Killua couldn't see inside. It was pitch black. Tianming grinned at their curiosity and flipped on the light. Snap! The room lit up, revealing dozens of Greed Island consoles, memory cards, and other equipment. The entire room was packed. Gon's eyes went wide. Killua's pupils shrank. They had studied the specs and appearance of the Greed Island consoles and recognized them instantly. Tianming looked incredibly smug. Finally, these little punks would understand who they were dealing with. He folded his hands behind his back and said in a showy voice, "I don't even like playing games. What was Badora thinking, giving me so many? I can't possibly use them all. It's a pain figuring out what to do with them." Killua was deadpan, staring at him with thinly veiled exasperation. This guy really loved to mess with people. Interrupting Gon's eager plea to buy a set, Killua stepped forward. "You've got a ton of Greed Island gear just sitting around. You should rent it out. That way you're not wasting their value and can make money while you're at it." Tianming was a little impressed. In this era, Killua was already thinking like a game monetization strategist. He could totally run a company. Of course, Tianming could tell what Killua was getting at. He and Gon wanted to rent the game to save money. Fair enough. But Tianming surprised them. "No need for that. I've got more than enough. I'll just give each of you a set." Gon nearly jumped out of his skin in excitement. This was what they'd come to Ukexin for, to get into Greed Island and follow the trail left by Jing. With Tianming's help, that dream was now within reach. After the excitement, they all returned to their seats. Gon and Killua looked much more relaxed, now that their biggest goal was resolved. Still, Tianming added, "These consoles come with full save data. I've already collected over 90% of the cards in the game. All you'll need to do is gather a few rare ones to finish it." Before Gon or Killua could get too excited, Tianming raised a finger. "But, this isn't free. I have one condition. Inside the game, I want you to help me search for an NPC named Razor. If you find him, contact me right away. That's all I ask." Both agreed immediately. That kind of condition was no problem, they'd be exploring the island anyway, so it was easy to keep an eye out for an NPC. With Gon and Killua settled, Tianming moved on to distributing the Phantom Troop bounty shares. Even though everyone present was a hunter, and none of them were short on money, the bounty was huge. Ignoring it wasn't an option. Leorio, the weakest of the group and not expected to fight, was given 5% of the total bounty as a support role. Even that was a huge sum for someone not involved in combat. Though Leorio grumbled a bit about being sidelined, he accepted it. Compared to everyone else, he really didn't have the strength to argue. The remaining 5, Tianming, Gon, Killua, Wing, and Badoro, would be engaging the troop head-on. Each received an equal 5% share of the total bounty. Even Tianming, as team leader, didn't take more than that. This upfront distribution avoided post-battle drama over who did more work. In reality, without a system to log stats or performance, that kind of argument could ruin a team. Everyone accepted the terms without complaint. Tianming's fairness earned him trust. Finally, Tianming handed out thick dossiers to each person. "These are the profiles I've compiled on each Phantom Troop member. Most of it is surface level, don't rely on it too much. Real fights will always come down to your own reactions in the moment. Keep your heads clear." Chapter 69. Killua was completely shocked. He had assumed Tianming would only bring out some rough, vague information. Just having the names of some Phantom Troop members would already be impressive. But the level of detail in these documents was far beyond what he could have imagined. They didn't just list names, each member's Nen ability was recorded in astonishing detail. Among everyone present, aside from Tianming, Killua might have had the deepest understanding of the Phantom Troop. 3 years ago, his father, Silva Zoldyck, had accepted a contract to assassinate a member of the troop. As a result, the Zoldyck family had done a deep dive into the group's strength. And yet, even the Zoldyck's intel wasn't this thorough. Where had Tianming gotten access to such confidential information? The more he read, the more unsettled he became, not by the intel, but by the terrifying Nen abilities of the troop members. Member number 12, Cortleby, could duplicate objects, even full-scale buildings. With this ability, the troop could set up powerful urban ambushes with ease. Member number 9, Pakunoda, could extract memories just through physical contact, complete memories, even from childhood, ones the subject didn't consciously remember anymore. Troop leader number 0, Krololu Silfer, possessed the terrifying ability to steal other people's Nen abilities and use them as his own. With powers like these, it was no wonder the Phantom Troop maintained their reputation as the most dangerous criminal organization in the world. When everyone finished reading, the room fell silent. The weight of the information was settling in. For the first time, they truly understood the scope of what they were up against. No one spoke, each person lost in the imagery of fighting these monsters in their minds. Suddenly, Leorio slammed the table and stood up. "We need to find Kurapika immediately. He probably doesn't even know the phantom troop is in Ukexen. If he runs into them alone, he's dead." Tianming nodded. "Leave Kurapika to me. Don't make any rash moves. I'll contact you once I confirm the troop's location." Huwashi Dulong, having read through the files, frowned and said, "Why not let us help with the search? Going alone is risky. We could spread out and find them faster." But Tianming shook his head. His observation hockey covered an enormous range. Even if he ran into the entire phantom troop alone, he was confident he could escape unscathed. Sending the others out would only increase the chances of them being picked off one by one. Having made his decision, Tianming left the hotel alone and took a taxi to a 5-star hotel. Using his VIP card, he was led to a private luxury suite by a staff member. Inside was an old acquaintance, Batra. Batra sat on the couch in a white bathrobe, looking utterly drained. Tianming sensed the presence of someone else in the adjacent room. The corner of his mouth twitched. This old man really was going to die trying to satisfy his girlfriend. After everything he did to save her, was he now trying to exhaust himself to death? But he didn't dwell on it. "Brother," he asked, "do you have any information about the underground auction hosted by the 10 Dons?" Batra raised a brow but still managed a tired smile. "Of course. People like me can't survive in business without maintaining ties with the mafia. I know several of the 10 Dons representatives. If you want in, I can make the arrangements." Tianming nodded. "Thanks. That's all I needed." Before leaving, he added, "And take care of yourself. No point saving your woman just to die from overexertion." Batra gave a dry laugh but said nothing. He knew it was true, but knowing didn't mean he could change. Tianming took the address Batra provided and prepared for the upcoming underground auction. He had originally considered asking for direct contact with the Nostrade family, Kurapika's current employer. But that felt too risky. Kurapika's temperament made him unpredictable, being too direct might scare him off. 3 days later, the auction began. The 10 Dons underground auction was massive. It would run for several days, featuring forbidden and black market items that couldn't appear at normal public auctions. Among the items, scarlet eyes from the Kurta clan, various rare human body parts, books banned for moral or political reasons, even lost treasures from assassinated royal families of small nations, all up for bidding. The auction took place in an old, abandoned high-rise in the southeast of Ukexen. On this day, the building was brightly lit, surrounded by parked luxury vehicles and guarded entrances. Representatives from various mafia families and criminal syndicates stood outside, dressed in sharp suits. Their polished appearances belied their bloody hands. Suddenly, a taxi rolled up to the entrance, drawing everyone's attention. Inside sat a young man. The nervous taxi driver peeked at him, clearly unsettled. Tianming handed over a thick wad of cash. "Keep the change," he said cheerfully. "Call it a tip." The driver bolted away like he'd been released from death row. Tianming looked around but didn't see the person he was expecting. Ignoring the stares, he casually strolled toward the building. Halfway there, a bald thug in a suit stepped in his way. "Which family are you with?" the man demanded. "Who's your boss?" Tianming didn't want to drag Batra into this or start a scene, so he casually replied, "I'm from Konoha. My boss is the 7th Hokage, Uzumaki Naruto." He pushed past the guard, but the man, stunned for a second, recovered quickly. He pulled a pistol from his coat and aimed it at the back of Tianming's head. "You little punk. You think you're funny? Say another word and I'll..." Just then, a charming female voice rang out, interrupting the confrontation. Chapter 70. Tianming turned his head and saw a woman in a red dress speaking. She wore her hair in an elegant bun and looked about 25 years old, tall and curvy, definitely someone who gave off a mature vibe. The gangster lowered his gun when he heard the name Noser family, but still snorted and warned, "Behave yourself, Cause any trouble, and I'll shoot." The woman walked up to Tianming, introducing herself with a charming smile. "I'm Baze, currently working for the Noser family. Since you were able to investigate and find out this is the location of the underground auction, you must be someone in the know. Why didn't you report which family or group you're from?" Baze's tone was pleasant, her eyes flirtatious as she studied Tianming with obvious curiosity. Tianming returned her smile. "I'm not affiliated with any group. And I'm not here for the auction, either." "Oh?" Baze raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you here?" She was more and more intrigued. The way he crashed attend Don's auction without fear. Either he had a terrifying background or he was just plain crazy. Either way, he was interesting. She hadn't wanted to be here, being assigned auction babysitting duty annoyed her. But now that someone interesting showed up, she figured she might as well have some fun. Tianming pulled out his phone casually. "You know Kurapika, right? Give me his number. I need to talk to him." The smile disappeared from Baze's face. The Noser family's security roster wasn't top secret, but it wasn't public either. That someone casually asked for Kurapika's number like it was no big deal meant they'd done their homework. Her tone cooled. "How do you know Kurapika?" At the same time, two more men in suits quietly closed in. All three were from the Noser family. They subtly surrounded Tianming in a triangle formation. They were non-users, but all of them were weaklings. Tianming didn't even have to move to shrug off any threat they posed. What actually caught his attention was what was happening outside the auction hall. With his observation hockey, he picked up a black van pulling up behind the auction staff's car. Several powerful oars emerged from it. Tianming watched as they killed the staff, dumped the bodies, and hijacked the vehicle. A moment later, the replacement staff walked into the venue. Men and women, tall and short, strange outfits, striking appearances, there was no mistaking them. They were members of the Phantom Troupe. As they passed by, Phaeton muttered under his breath, "We've been spotted. Should we take care of him now?" Shizuku, the baby-faced woman at the front, gave Tianming a side glance and replied, "Yeah, he noticed us. But he didn't react like someone who knows who we are. Stick to the plan. If he causes trouble, we act." The troop members quickly moved on. Tianming watched them with a smile. He hadn't expected to run into them so soon. Phaeton, Shizuku, Franklin, Finks. Things were about to get interesting. Baze's voice brought him back. "I'm Kurapika's friend," Tianming said casually. "His phone's off, so I need to talk to him through you. If you're suspicious, I can talk to him right now, on speaker, so you can listen." Baze, Iwanbo, and Basho exchanged glances. Basho, who resembled a Japanese gangster straight out of an old crime flick, pulled out his phone and dialed Kurapika. After 10 seconds, the line connected. He put it on speaker. "Hello? Basho? Is something going on at the auction?" Tianming leaned closer and said loudly, "The number you gave me doesn't even work. Now I have to go through all this just to find you, huh?" Kurapika froze on the other end. He was currently stationed on a nearby rooftop, telescope in hand, watching the auction building. Melody, standing next to him, winced and covered her ears. The shout from the phone had nearly knocked her out. That voice. It doesn't sound like Basho. This person, his aura is. Melody trailed off, trying to describe it. Kurapika calmly interrupted, "It's fine, Melody. I know who it is." He took a breath. "Tianming? Why are you here? And why are you on Basho's phone? What happened?" By now, the tension in Baze, Basho, and Iwanbo had mostly faded. It was clear this stranger knew Kurapika, and wasn't hostile. But Iwanbo still felt uneasy. Earlier divinations from their boss's daughter, Neon, had warned of serious danger during the auction. None of the families who sought her predictions had sent anyone. Something was clearly coming. Tianming took Basho's phone, jotted down Kurapika's number, and replied, "The Phantom Troupe is about to attack this auction. Where are you? I'll come to you. We'll talk in person." As soon as he said it, the blood drained from the faces of Baze, Basho, and Iwanbo. Their spines went cold. The Phantom Troop, everyone in the underground knew their name. And if they really were going to attack, this was about to become a disaster. Before anyone could respond, Kurapika's voice exploded from the phone. Chapter 71. Kurapika stood on the rooftop, gripping the metal railing tightly with his left hand. The force twisted the thick iron bar out of shape. His entire body trembled, and behind his contact lenses, his eyes had turned a deep, blood-red shade. He was clearly consumed by rage, his scarlet eyes burning with murderous intent. Beside him, Melody did her best to calm him down. She had never seen Kurapika in such a state. Just from the sound of his pulse, she could tell how unstable his emotions were. The Phantom Troop clearly had a deep, unresolved connection with him. After a moment, Kurapika composed himself. When he spoke again to Tianming through the phone, his tone was calm, but the way his fingers shook betrayed his true emotions. "Where did you get your information? Is the source reliable?" Tianming replied without hesitation. "Hard to say if the source is 100% reliable, but I just saw members of the Phantom Troop disguise themselves as auction staff and enter the building with my own eyes." "What?" Iwalanfu and Dokino both cried out in shock. Even the composed Phaeton looked pale. She remembered now, when they had surrounded Tianming earlier, his eyes had been fixed on a group of auction staff. She had even joked internally that he was checking out one of the pretty women in the group. She never would have guessed that the staff Tianming had been watching were Phantom Troop members. Iwalanfu was sweating bullets, trembling from head to toe. Just minutes ago, the world's most dangerous criminal organization had passed within 10 meters of him. The sheer realization made his legs weak. All he wanted now was to get far, far away from this place. Kurapika, still on the phone, quickly recovered from the shock and yelled, "Then what the hell are you still doing there? Get out of there. I'll inform the gang leaders and have them take action." Tianming groaned inwardly. "We've come full circle again," he replied, exasperated. "That's why I asked where you are. I'll come find you and we can talk in person." Kurapika's voice was tense. "Exit the auction building. You'll see a tall office tower directly across from you. I'll meet you downstairs." "Got it." Tianming handed the phone back to Dokino, who took it with shaking hands, as if it weighed a ton. "I'm heading over to meet Kurapika. You all coming with me, or staying here to enjoy the bloodbath?" "Stay here?" Was he kidding? Knowing the Phantom Troop was about to strike, there wasn't a single fool in the group dumb enough to stick around. Phaeton, Dokino, and Iwalanfu all chose to follow Tianming without hesitation. The four of them quickly exited the auction building. Dokino checked his watch, 8:45 p.m. The auction was scheduled to start at 9. He pointed to a black car parked nearby. "There. Hurry, get in." Phaeton and Iwalanfu both looked to Tianming, waiting for his approval. In their eyes now, he had become their de facto leader. Tianming nodded. Once everyone was in, Dokino slammed his foot on the gas, and the car screeched away from the scene. As they sped through the streets, Tianming finally had time to take a closer look at these three. Phaeton was familiar, she had left a strong impression in the original story, but despite her memorable design, she was just another expendable side character. She didn't last long after her debut. Dokino, the driver, was vaguely remembered as having some clone ability involving inflatable copies of himself, likely a manipulation or emission type. As for Iwalanfu, Tianming honestly couldn't recall anything about him. Maybe he was the guy who tried to throw a chair at Franklin during the attack? Either way, another extra. Dokino sped through red lights like a man possessed. In no time, they arrived at the foot of the tower Kurapika had mentioned. Kurapika and Melody were already waiting downstairs. As soon as the car stopped, they climbed in. With 6 people now crammed inside, the car became suffocatingly cramped. Melody squeezed into the back, and just as she got in, she glanced at Kurapika in confusion. Kurapika was awkwardly sprawled across Tianming's lap. Kurapika immediately shouted, "Tianming, you damn pervert! Let go of me!" Tianming, equally annoyed, shoved Kurapika to the side. You're the one who leapt into my lap. My leg's going numb. You think I want to hold you, you discount blonde? The two began arguing like children. You're always hanging out with Hisoka. Who knows what kind of twisted relationship you two have? Oh, you wanna see twisted? I'll show you twisted right now. Phaeton finally had enough and traded seats with Melody. With Melody in the front, the back row opened up, and the two bickering idiots finally settled down. Once silence returned, Kurapika finally asked about the situation. Tianming was first to speak. Did you manage to contact the gang leaders about the troop? Kurapika shook his head. No. I don't have their direct numbers. I reported the situation to Captain Dazone and asked him to pass it on. Phaeton frowned. What did he say? Kurapika's tone turned cold. He told us to lay low, cooperate with the other gang security teams, and not do anything to raise suspicion. Everyone fell silent. They all understood what that meant. The Nozra family had no intention of getting involved. They weren't going to inform the 10 Dons either. This was an issue between the Phantom Troop and the Dons, not their concern. All they could do now was wait. Chapter 72. Phaegia looked at Kurapika through the rearview mirror and asked in a low voice, what should we do next? Should we just leave, or wait until the Phantom Troop's attack is over before going back? Iwanov and Tassino's hearts were practically beating out of their chests. They'd just brushed against death, and the last thing they wanted was to go back into that terrifying place. The car fell silent. Everyone looked at Kurapika, waiting for his decision. Kurapika lowered his head, thinking for a moment. Then he spoke. I plan to return to the auction venue. Our orders are to stay consistent with the other gangs. If something happens and the Nozra family is absent, it'll raise suspicion. Just as Iwanov and Tassino began to despair, Kurapika added, but I'll go back alone. It'll attract less attention that way. The rest of you stay here and wait for my instructions. The two men breathed a visible sigh of relief. As long as they didn't have to return, they'd follow any command happily. The car stopped at a nearby construction site. Soon after, another black car pulled up beside them. A dark-skinned man stepped out, Skawala. Tianming instantly recognized him as the dog trainer who played a minor role in the original storyline. At this point, Skawala still had no idea what was going on. He was just there because Kurapika had asked him to bring a car, completely unaware of the situation. Kurapika told everyone else to head back to Nyon's residence to protect her, while he prepared to return to the auction. As Kurapika turned to go, Tianming stretched his neck and followed. I'm going with you. There's something I need to talk to you about. Kurapika nodded. He'd already sensed Tianming had something important to say, and he himself had questions, like how Tianming knew the troop was coming and could even identify its members. Just as the two were about to get in, Melody stepped forward. I'm going too. My Nen ability is useful for reconnaissance. If anything happens, I can warn you in time. Tianming didn't think Melody's presence was necessary. His observation haki had a wider range than her ability. But hers had its own advantages, like picking up on hidden conversations. It might come in handy. The three of them opened the car doors and got in at once. Tianming sat in the passenger seat. When the door shut, the three of them exchanged glances. They looked at the empty driver's seat. Tianming pointed at it. Kurapika, you drive. I can't. Tianming turned to Melody. You? Melody raised her hands and shrugged. Do I look like I can drive with these arms? Tianming's head throbbed. How are there two gang members who don't even know how to drive? Just then, someone slipped into the driver's seat. It was Phaegia. She fastened her seatbelt and smiled. I'll drive. I'm curious to see the Phantom Troop myself. Kurapika frowned. It'll be dangerous. Phaegia smirked. We'll stay on the sidelines. Besides, you and this guy are clearly strong. We'll be fine just observing. Kurapika didn't argue. Phaegia floored the gas, racing back toward the auction faster than she'd come. Meanwhile, the auction hall lights dimmed. Hundreds of underworld figures sat in the audience, their eyes adjusting as the stage went dark. A spotlight lit up two men, One tall, one short. The tall one was Franklin, a burly man with wide shoulders and a mean glare. But it was the short man beside him who drew the most attention, Phaeton. Phaeton stepped forward, adjusted the microphone, and cleared his throat. "Dear guests, thank you for coming," he said with mock courtesy. "Let's skip the pleasantries and get straight to the point. All of you, go die." Stunned silence. Several people went for the pistols on their hips, but it was too late. Franklin raised his arms, revealing 10 Nen cannons in his fingers. With a flick of his wrists, he unleashed a barrage of Nen bullets. The shots tore through the front rows, punching holes through bodies like paper. Pools of blood quickly spread across the floor. Some guests tried to flee through the exit. But before they could escape, Shizuko appeared at the door. With a single swing of her conjured vacuum blinky, she crushed their skulls. The vacuum sucked the bodies in, clean, bloodless. Within minutes, the massacre was over. Only 3 remained. Franklin calmly retracted his fingers. That was pathetic. Not a single decent fighter. Phaeton kept his hands in his pockets. "The boss sent me here to deal with anyone strong. But there's nothing to do. Easiest job of the day." By now, Shizuku had nearly finished vacuuming the room. She hovered over the final body, but it wouldn't budge. She frowned and looked up. Someone still alive. The injured gang member, still clinging to life, glared up at the trio and shouted hoarsely, "You bastards are dead. You dared attack a gang-run auction. The 10 Dons will wipe out everyone connected to you. Your friends, your families." His curses were cut off mid-sentence. Chapter 73. The treasure is missing? Where are the people who were attending the auction? They're gone too. I searched the entire building but couldn't find anyone. The building that had hosted the auction was in complete chaos. Members of various gangs ran frantically through the halls searching for the missing core members of their own families. Others, under the guise of searching for missing comrades, were clearly looking for the whereabouts of the auction goods. After all, many of the treasures had been consigned by these very gangs, and now everything was gone. Outside, the streets were a mess. Gang-affiliated vehicles were parked haphazardly, blocking roads and creating gridlock. Phaeton parked the car in an inconspicuous corner across the road. She was about to open the door when Tianming calmly said, "No need to go in. The phantom troop has already left, and a hot air balloon." He raised his hand and pointed to the sky. Kurapika opened the door, stepped out of the car, and looked through his telescope. Sure enough, floating in the pitch-black sky was a vague, oval-shaped silhouette, a hot air balloon. It had been modified to avoid detection. From the ground, it was difficult to see the fire burning beneath it. Only a faint black shadow could be made out against the night. Kurapika turned to Melody in the car. She closed her eyes gently. The noise of the city faded, and a deep, booming voice came clearly to her ears, despite being thousands of meters up. "Ugh! All the auction loot's gone," Yuvagin muttered into the phone, scratching his chest hair. With a massive build and wild appearance, Yuvagin wore a tattered gray vest resembling animal hide. His voice boomed with strength, like thunder cracking across a valley. The calm, gentle voice on the other end of the phone was unmistakable. It was Krololu Sulfur. "So you're saying, we've got a traitor in the troop?" Kurapika's fists clenched, his pulse quickened. He could hear the disgust in Yuvagin's voice as he glanced coldly at the other phantom troop members riding in their balloon. "This is too much of a coincidence," Yuvagin growled. "The auction treasures were being stockpiled here for weeks, but just hours before our arrival, they were suddenly moved. If someone didn't leak the information, how would the gangs know?" Kurlo replied calmly. "There's no traitor. The loot is shared equally. No one, not even me, gets more than their share. No gang would be willing to pay what we're all owed just to buy someone off." Satisfied, Yuvagin dropped the subject. But then his tone changed. "I heard the guy who moved the treasure is one of the shadow beasts, a guy named Owl. Mind if I pay them a visit?" Kurlo chuckled. "Sure. Make a scene. Draw them out. But capture Owl alive. We need him to tell us where the treasure is. Let Phaeton handle the interrogation." The moment Yuvagin got permission, His aura exploded around him like a wild beast awakening. His body radiated high-purity Nen, and he cracked his knuckles in anticipation. Perfect? Ha 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 ha. Down below, Melody staggered back, breaking into a cold sweat. Her face turned pale as she clutched her chest and gasped for air. Phaeton rushed over. Melody. What is it? What did you hear? Melody steadied herself and replied seriously, the Phantom Troop. They're planning to slaughter the gangs to force the shadow beasts out and steal the treasure. Phaeton's expression shifted. Wait. Didn't the troop already take the treasure? No, Melody said. They didn't. I'll explain everything later. Tianming, using observation hockey, tracked the balloon. Each passenger radiated overwhelming Nen. It was the first time he had ever sensed so many elite-level Nen users gathered in one place. His body trembled with anticipation. His blood boiled. His Nen surged, begging for release, but he forced it back down. Not yet. Let the troop wipe out the shadow beasts first. Then, when the bounty spikes, that's when we strike. Suddenly, the hot air balloon above them lit up with vivid red glow. The once stealthy craft now glowed like a beacon in the night, drawing everyone's attention. Gangs on the ground looked up. These criminals weren't fools. A glowing balloon fleeing the city in the dead of night? Suspicious was an understatement. Gangsters jumped into their vehicles and gave chase. Tianming and the others followed from a distance, maintaining enough space to avoid being dragged into a direct conflict. This was Tianming's idea. Let the gangsters scout ahead. They'd watch from afar, through Melody's telepathy and binoculars. As they trailed the convoy, Melody turned toward Tianming in the front seat and nodded in approval. Smart move. If we'd followed too closely, we'd have been noticed. Tianming raised a brow. Why? One of the troop members mentioned you. Flashback. Back on the balloon, Shanark had tossed a bit of powder into the balloon's flame, causing the whole craft to glow red. Once that was done, he clapped his hands and said, Hey, do you guys remember that weirdo staring at us before the auction started? Phaeton squinted. Yeah. That guy in the black and white martial arts outfit. Franklin grunted. Early 20s. Kinda smug. Was sizing us up. Shizuko tilted her head. Who? Chapter 74. Maki turned to look at Shanark expressionlessly. At this moment, everyone was discussing Tianming. Phaeton said, as soon as we entered, that man was staring at us. I thought he had already discovered our identities and was about to make a move. Franklin followed with a deep voice, that guy gave off a very unusual feeling. I could sense a kind of heavy presence from him. He must be a pretty strong Nen user. The moment he said strong, Yuvalgin's eyes lit up with excitement. His face twisted into a grin as he looked over at Franklin. So, that guy who noticed us must be him. After we deal with the gang, I'm going to find him. And don't forget, I called dibs, he's mine. Yuvalgin clenched his fists in anticipation, and the members closest to him could hear the popping of his knuckles. No wonder he was so eager. Franklin was always reserved and rarely praised others. If even he called someone a master, then that person had to be something else. Yuvalgin's lifelong goal was to become the strongest fighter in the world. If someone like that existed, he had to take them on, or he wouldn't be able to sleep. But Shanark said calmly, don't get too hyped yet, Yuvalgin. I don't think he's the one who leaked the intel. He continued, maybe he did recognize us, but the auction manager said the treasures were moved by the shadow beasts a few hours before the event. That guy didn't even show up until half an hour before it started. The timeline doesn't match. Shanark's logical analysis ruled out the possibility of Tianming being the informant, but Yuvalgin didn't care either way. Whether that guy had ties to the mafia or the Tendons didn't matter, he was still a strong opponent Yuvalgin intended to crush. Maki, who had been silent the whole time, turned back toward the group. By now, she had basically confirmed that the man at the auction was the one who had fought Hisoka a few months back. Unlike Shanark, her information source was different, so her suspicions about Tianming went in a different direction. It was entirely possible that Tianming was the one who had leaked the information to the mafia, and that the person who gave him that intel was Hisoka. After treating Hisoka in the Sky Arena, Maki had secretly dug up some info on Tianming and learned about his ambiguous relationship with Hisoka. The two had met during the Hunter exam, and although they had fought, their overall dynamic seemed friendly. In that case, it was entirely likely Hisoka had spilled the Phantom Troop's plans, intentionally or not. Maki secretly gritted her teeth. She didn't know whether Hisoka had betrayed the troop on purpose, or if it was just carelessness. But one thing was certain, this wasn't something she could bring up now. She knew Yuvogin too well. If he found out Hisoka might have betrayed the troop, he'd lose it and rush to fight him. Instead of letting things spiral, it was better to go straight to Krillou and let the boss decide how to handle it. Whatever Krillou decided, Yuvogin would accept. The troop's hot air balloon continued flying until it descended over a place called the Gode Desert on the outskirts of York-Nu. Meanwhile, Tianming's group had tailed the gang convoy carefully. But once they reached a hillside, Tianming had them break off and stop at a hidden spot behind it. Everyone climbed out of the car. Melody looked up toward the direction of the balloon and said, "The troop has landed. I think they're getting ready to ambush the gangsters who've been chasing them. It's too risky to go any closer, we can only observe from here." No one objected. They climbed to the top of the hill. Kurapika passed around a pair of binoculars, and Tianming accepted his pair too. While he had observation haki, he couldn't rely on it exclusively. Overuse might dull his natural senses over time. Through the binoculars, he saw Yuvogin already charging into the gang's formation. The 2-meter-tall beast of a man moved like a tank through the mob. Gunfire flashed, but the bullets bounced off his skin. Even a sniper round only made him flinch. Seeing this, Phaeton's face paled and her lips went white. Her expression was grim. Of the four watching, Kurapika had already steeled himself. He knew the Phantom Troop was strong. Melody had felt their overwhelming aura through her nen and wasn't surprised either. As for Tianming, he looked completely unbothered. In his past life, he'd seen plenty of people stronger than Yuvogin. This scene barely moved the needle for him. But Phaeton was stunned. She had never expected such a massive gap. She had thought she'd at least be able to escape even if she couldn't win. After all, they were all nen users, how big could the difference be? Now she realized how wrong she was. Her own 180-point love slave technique could control someone with a kiss, but how could she possibly land it on a monster like Yuvogin? Suddenly, a burst of aura behind her startled her so badly she almost dropped the binoculars. "Which family are you with?" They turned and saw a bald weirdo in nothing but underwear crawling out of the dirt. Tianming wasn't surprised. He had already sensed the approach of the shadow beasts. Along with this worm, there were 3 more behind him. Fei-Jia let out a sigh of relief upon recognizing them and quickly explained their identity to Kurapika. Kurapika stepped forward and said, "We're from the Nostrade family's security team. We're here to track down the ones who attacked the auction." After confirming their identities, the shadow beasts tried to pass by them to join the fight, but Tianming's voice stopped them in their tracks. Chapter 75. Hearing the name Phantom Troop, the 4 members of the shadow beasts widened their eyes in shock. The one called Earthworm looked at Tianming and asked, "Kid, are you sure it's the Phantom Troop?" The Phantom Troop's name was infamous across the underground world. As the Tendan's strongest enforcer unit, the shadow beasts had naturally heard of the troop. Tianming smiled and replied, "You'll know for yourself soon enough. But before that, let me give you a word of advice." "What advice?" Boom. A terrifying pressure descended on the 4 shadow beasts. It felt as if mountains had fallen onto their shoulders. They stumbled backward, barely managing to keep their footing. But what shocked them even more was that no one else present seemed to be affected by the overwhelming aura. Kurapika and Phaeton stared at them with puzzled expressions, then looked back at Tianming, realizing he must have done something, but whatever it was, they hadn't sensed it at all. Only Melody was truly shaken. While she couldn't detect what Tianming had done, her nen ability allowed her to understand the state of the 4 shadow beasts. The precision with which Tianming targeted only them, without disturbing anyone else, was simply beyond belief. Tianming withdrew his aura. The 4 shadow beasts gasped like prisoners just released from torture, trembling as they glared at Tianming in fear. With a smile, Tianming said casually, "Next time, try to be more respectful when you speak to me. Don't call me kid or anything like that, understood?" They didn't reply. Tianming chuckled. "Don't want to answer? That's fine too. You won't be seeing me again anyway. After all, you're all going to die to the phantom troop." The shadow beast known as Rabid Dog snarled, "Don't look down on us, bastard. Just wait, we'll wipe out the troop and then come back for you." Tianming waved them off like he was shooing away stray dogs. Yeah. Go on. Run along now." Enraged but unable to ignore their mission, the shadow beasts turned and stormed off toward their battlefield. Kurapika approached Tianming and spoke seriously. There was no need to provoke them like that. If they lose their composure, they might expose weaknesses to the enemy. From Kurapika's perspective, the shadow beasts were on par with the phantom troop, and losing focus in a battle between equals could be fatal. He even began to wonder, did Tianming provoke them on purpose to get them killed? Tianming quickly clarified. "Those shadow beasts are strong, sure. But they've gotten cocky. Maybe it's because they've been in too many easy fights. I wanted to fire them up a bit so they wouldn't underestimate their enemies. Anger can have its disadvantages, but one benefit is that they'll fight at full strength." Kurapika nodded slightly. Just then, the battle between Nuvolgin and the shadow beasts began. Everyone turned their attention to the clash unfolding in the distance. To be fair, Tianming's provocation did work. The shadow beasts went all in the moment the fight began. Earthworm trapped Nuvolgin's left hand underground, making it impossible to move. When Nuvolgin tried to charge a Big Bang impact with his right fist, the porcupine pierced it with his hardened body hair. Porcupine's ability allowed him to control his hair freely. He could make it as hard as needles or as soft as pillows. Nuvolgin couldn't channel his full strength through his injured arm, and with one hand buried, he couldn't break free. Rabid Dog lunged next, locking his jaws around Nuvolgin's throat and injecting a potent neurotoxin. The venom spread rapidly, and Nuvolgin's vision began to blur. This poison was powerful enough to kill an elephant. The shadow beasts were fighting like mad dogs, clearly motivated by Tianming's taunt. In truth, if a weakling had insulted them, they would have brushed it off. But Tianming's power was undeniable. Being looked down on by such a powerful figure struck a nerve, and they wanted to prove themselves by crushing Nuvolgin. Now Nuvolgin was barely hanging on, his throat crushed, both arms out of commission, and his body flooded with poison. He relied solely on his fighting instinct to stay conscious. He knew if he blacked out now, the venom would finish him. He was furious. If they'd gone one-on-one, he could have crushed them like bugs. But these guys had rushed him all at once with perfect coordination. He couldn't even get a hit in. How did he end up in such a humiliating position? The 4th shadow beast, Leech, approached with his grotesque tongue dangling. He planned to inject a parasite called the brain-eater worm directly into the back of Nuvolgin's skull. This worm would tunnel through the brain, devouring everything in its path. Nuvolgin wouldn't last a minute. Leech no longer wanted to torment his prey, he wanted Nuvolgin dead.